This has been a long time of waiting. It has felt like a long time since Peter Capaldi. A long time since Russell T Davies was announced as returning. And 2 years since Ncuti Gatwa was revealed as the 15th Doctor. As season 14, or season 1 dawns, with a great American input fueled by American dollars and Disney's streaming capacity, many fans wondered whether the Doctor Who would be able to stay quintessentially British. Russell T Davies, self-appointed gatekeeper in the media and custodian of Doctor Who, previously an award-winning writer, clearly has a dangerous tightrope to walk. One false move and the show could be lost, and the Disney contract and the BBC interest diminished or even gone. Get it right, and Doctor Who dominates the global market like some Hollywood franchise. It's not an envious task. Does he pull it off with this new season of 8 episodes? Will Doctor Who be turned into a slapstick, end-of-pier, silly novelty piece, just as the whole world's eyes are open to Doctor Who, and hopefully its magic and its uniqueness? Will the frequent, confronting interviews from cast and crew and the joyous delving into Doctor Who lore, like the Timeless Children, prove a masterstroke, or leave Doctor Who fans across the globe and online fighting like cats in a sack, arguing over whose show it is, and who owns it, and who it's for? And I'm a real fan, you're not. This is certainly an historic, possibly seminal moment for our favourite show. With that in mind, there is only one stream, one panel where you cannot predict or guess the responses and views. You're in the right place. Do you want to come with us? Well, then I should warn you, you're going to hear all sorts of things. It won't be quiet, it won't be safe, and it won't be calm. But I'll tell you what it will be, a debate of a lifetime. Let's start reviewing. Well, I got burnt there. Did you see that? That flame, I couldn't deal with it. How did Chris Eccleston deal with all that flame? I've got 3rd-degree burns here. Right. Well, welcome one and all. Let's have a look. Get everybody in order. I can't have a microphone and a bandage at the same time. So, auspicious night. The BAFTA's on in Britain. They had the Eurovision Song Contest yesterday. Doctor Who looked a bit Hollywood. So I think we'd go glam tonight. So here we go. Taking the pee, basically. So basically, I need a panel, and on this auspicious occasion, I need to actually start to present them in a decent, auspicious way. So be ready for this, because I want to be fair to you. Oh, welcome, John. Yes, I think he's happy with that.
Oh, yes. I'm waiting up for this.
And here's Hugh. Nice to see you, Hugh. And of course, we have Michelle on our team. Hello, Michelle. And we have Harry Retrodog. Good to see you. And we have Rachael. Hiya. I think we should do this every time. Yeah. Are you knackered? You see, that's aerobics done for you.
You stopped that just in time. I was about to start taking my clothes off.
Imagine,
No, we're not Eurovision. Please keep your testicles within.
Well, you know what these award shows are like. You get that schmaltzy music, and as soon as the person comes to the mic to hand out the Oscar, it cuts dead, doesn't it? So
It does.
I tried to do that exactly. So
I actually want to thank everybody who got me to where I am today. My agent, my feng shui coordinator, my second grade teacher, Mrs. Tucker, and my life coach, Jeff Goldblum.
yeah, this is it. And I'm bothered about certain issues in the world. I want to list now, so I'll look good as well. I'll do them. So welcome everybody. It feels like it's been a while, hasn't it? But we're going to do the Space Babies. Oh my God,
Space Babies!
Space Babies. He was very excited saying Space Babies.
Babies!
I'm not quite sure why he was so keen on saying Space Babies all the time. But if anybody's new to our channel, welcome one and all. We do take the mic. We really do take the mic. In fact, you'll be seeing the Mickey being... hold on. I can't start here. Hold on. Hello, how are you?
John mentioned about taking clothes off.
Oh my God!
I want to be a space baby.
It's a space baby. Look at this. I thought you were wokey. I thought you were a teenager.
No, I want to be a space baby, Mr. Brendan.
They were actually 6 years old. I still don't understand that in the plot. Did you, everybody? There was six of Benjamin Buttons, but they were acting like babies. And he was infantilizing them. Not sure about that.
Is that nappy cool?
I'm not quite sure if that nappy's... yeah, I'm not going too close. Oh, hold on. Who's the nanny?
I'm the nanny. Hello.
Come on, the Welsh nanny. Is this Nerys Hughes, the Welsh nanny?
Did you notice that? Did you know the nanny? That's the most amazing accountant I've ever met. Who was that nurturing? Normally they couldn't give a damn. It's all about the money.
But he wants to be a space baby. I don't know about that because if you're a space baby, nobody apparently will watch you. So I'm not really sure if that's a good idea.
Yeah, that's it. And it's time for bed. It means we can get away with it. Right?
Come on, Walkie. It's time for your nappy to be changed. And you're going to be in my care forever now.
Oh, yeah. Taken away. You shouldn't have been lying, Walkie. You'll never see us again.
Oh,
Bye.
Mr. Brendan, will you help me?
Yeah, you're not a refugee. Bye.
Boy.
I'll tell you what. So if nobody's seen our channel before, it gets that bad sometimes, anyway.
Yeah.
But
All the time.
But you have to do that. I call it therapy, Michelle. It is therapy for what? Well, yes. We're going to get into that. I've promised people on Twitter and on Facebook that I actually think, having tweeted you all, I actually do think this is going to be the debate because nobody on this panel agrees. This is going to be really interesting. And it means I can say something else to everybody out there, which is the Sense Sphere does try and cross the divide. Nobody's cancelled. Every view counts. We don't rant. We don't shout at people. We respect. I will be intrigued if somebody says they loved something and I didn't. I'm intrigued by it. I want to know what have I missed? So that's where we're going to go. This is what the Sense Sphere is about. So without further ado, we normally do have an event early on, don't we? And it's normally called Burning Issues. Yeah, deliberately there to look as though there was chaos. I'm hiding it well, aren't I? So, burning issues. If you're new to the program and our show, we actually start with the contentious items. We don't start by saying, once upon a time, weren't you happy? So, basically, oh, God, Gary, you give me an essay. Hugh, John, Michelle, you give me a couple. Rachel, you've kept your powder dry. So, basically, oh, my God. Now, I'm going to start by just asking this question, just to get us going on the burning issue. When you watch Space Babies, because I actually did think, who was this show pitched at? I wondered whether I'd regressed. I wondered whether I was in some sort of institution. I wondered whether I suddenly my intellectual capabilities had been diminished. I couldn't read. I suddenly thought I was in primary school, or that I'd tuned into Nickelodeon or CBeebies. That's how I felt. I don't know about you.
Oh, so
wow, I felt like I was watching Look Who's Talking 3.0. That's what I felt like. There were good points and there were bad points. So that's where I stand. I'm sorry, I think I forgot to send you my notes, but
Don't worry.
yeah, apologies.
Don't worry, that's life. That's how we do it.
What was the name of that animated movie with the baby in the business suit?
Boss baby.
Boss baby.
Yeah.
Yes. And I must admit, anyway, so I'd asked everybody. Gary, I know you had an issue about audience, so I've heard quickly from Rachel, but I did find this problematic. How about you?
Me.
I was actually, I mean, in all seriousness, I mean, I was wondering during the show, like, who's it for? I mean, is it for sci-fi fans? Is it for longtime Doctor Who fans? Is it for adults? Is it for, you know, chronic insomnia sufferers? I mean, because we have with singing goblins, and now we have space babies, a snot monster, and a poop-powered ship. I mean, it seems like it's for under fives. I mean, at first, honestly, I thought it was maybe like under tens, but kids usually like watching other child characters that's their own age or a little bit older. That's who child viewers are interested in. I'm not sure a 10-year-old will be interested in watching babies for an hour. So that's why I settled at around under fives.
Yeah, I did feel, and we can get into the nuts and bolts of whether that's fair enough or not. John, where do you come on this one, on that question before you get to your burning issue? What?
Or who's aimed at?
Yeah.
Yeah, take your pick, really, because there's farting aliens, there's nappies full of poo, there's bogey monsters, there's all sorts of going on to appeal to children and people whose humour is childlike, perhaps, but also there's some other stuff in there in terms of bad language, or the replacement of bad language designed, I'd imagine, to appeal to a more adult audience, perhaps, but undergraduate. I know it's a bit scattergun in his approach. I'm going to be kind to it and say that it was broad in its humour, in its intent, in its drama, and by being so broad, it was spread very thin. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it didn't collect enough from each demographic for it to be appreciated, perhaps.
There seems to be, Hugh, a lot of negativity in the thread so far, and I'm just flashing some of them up. Where do you stand on this, Hugh?
Yeah, so, I mean, as I said to you, Brendan, I mean, it seems to me to come across as what would have been a passable 10-minute children in need special. And, you know, given it would be children in need, having the babies, space babies, sorry, sort of would have made some form of connection and wouldn't have been too long. I immediately switched to, again, thinking of sort of like the Russell Davies talking about going to secondary school and continuing to like Doctor Who when other people didn't. I flashed back to that and thought, if I'd been 11 which is what I was when I went to secondary school, and watched that, I would have hated it, and it would have driven me up the wall.
You see, Michelle, I know you're very optimistic and positive, and you're allowed to be, of course you are. But Michelle, when I was about 5 or 6, I was watching Genesis of the Daleks. I learned new vocab. There were very adult sci-fi concepts, and then we get space babies. Have we all regressed as society?
Sadly, to a degree, I think we have. And I think we can kind of see that in the test results on both across the pond and also the media in general. I think we have regressed, and that's not a good thing. But at the same time, I'm going to be also optimistic. And the show, I mean, was that the greatest episode of Doctor Who I've ever seen? No. Was it enjoyable for 49 minutes? Yes. Did my family watch it with me? Yes, and enjoyed it. I think it was meant to be a light appetizer to Doctor Who, to introduce to the new audience, especially the new American audience, what Doctor Who is, its possibilities, what you're going to see, what you're going to experience. There's actually a couple callbacks to classic episodes. I didn't expect to ever see an homage to Fort of Doomsday in a modern day Doctor Who episode. So I think it is supposed to, and then the second episode after that, which we won't talk about, I think they're meant to be a gentle introduction until they're going to get more hard-hitting episodes, themes, concepts, and acting ranges for the principals as we go along.
It just worries me because we've only got 80 episodes, and
Sure.
we've now had 25% of the episodes last night. We were a quarter of the way through the season. And yes, I don't want to mention Devil's Card. We'll do that tomorrow night at 7 p.m. But I'm concerned that I don't think it seems to be talking to me. It doesn't seem to be reaching me. And I just happen to be a Doctor Who fan who has put up with everything all the way through. I haven't cancelled any period of Doctor Who, but I am finding that the exit door is actually closer to me than I ever thought it would be. And I went in last night not ready to pick on it. I was ready last night to think, I know that'll maybe be a bit like that, and that might have a bit of that. I'd factored it in. But me and Jamie looked at each other and we both felt very bored. That'll come up in criteria 3. But equally, my dad, who has defended the Jodie Whittaker era and everything, my dad said, what the hell was that? My mum takes or believes it, left it. Jamie's mum and dad always watch Doctor Who. They said they'll never watch again. So, you just start to think, what is going on? Rachel, I mean, when did you watch it? And then I'll bring Gary in, sorry.
I watched it. I didn't get a chance to watch it yesterday. I watched it today on the coach on the way back whilst I was traveling back, which is probably why you didn't get my notes. But that's when I watched it. But they are here. So I'm a good girl. Yeah, and I had a mixed bag of reactions. Let's just put it like that. I didn't know entirely what to make of it. Like I said, there were good points, there were bad points, and I think, well, we'll get into it more as it goes along, and obviously we'll find out what everyone really truly thinks. But I also questioned, actually, funny enough, what age group this was actually being aimed at, because one of my commenters who commented on one of the videos, Doctor Who videos on my channel, said that they didn't actually think it was appropriate for children. So I thought that was interesting. I didn't ask them why, but I should do. But I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, well, there was a bit when the babies were messing on and had flamethrows in their hand. I thought this is a very interesting idea. Gary, you were going to come in, weren't you?
I was just going to follow up to Michelle's comment. Is that, well, first I should say that when I sat down to watch this last night, I sat down intentionally kind of viewing it as a completely different show, which is, let's be honest, it is in a lot of ways. That has I viewed it as having no real relation to the show from 1963 to 2017. So I didn't have a comparison mindset when I watched it. I didn't watch it, with my arms crossed, daring it to be good. I tried to watch it, keeping out of my mind all of RTD's and Nshuti's, inanities that they've been spouting for weeks. But as far as the, who the audience is for, I think it's helpful to kind of, at least it was for me, to kind of look at the way the episode was structured, which that it seemed to me to be, well, first of all, the pace, even more than the usual kind of New Who episode, I thought the pace was way, way too fast. It seems like it starts out with about 10 minutes of kind of Cliff Notes exposition dump for the benefit of new viewers, instead of having the information just come out organically throughout the story. It was all basically kind of, ran down the points. And then I thought that throughout the episode, there was no real sense of kind of like slow buildup. There's a couple minutes where you get to a new room, you orient yourself there. There's an expo dump of new info, go to another room, get more new info, and then kind of rinse and repeat kind of all throughout. The thing I compared it to, honestly, is when it was over, I thought this is kind of the result of when you take the arc in space, speed it up to half the length, and remove all sense of mood, atmosphere, real jeopardy, and actual death. And that's this episode.
The prom in space.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you mentioned Ark in Space. I mentioned Genesis. These are when I was a little kid watching Doctor Who. And I'm just thinking, if this is a stepping on point and it's allowed, that's allowed to do that in these little mini reboots, then I accept there may be a bit of info dumps in various ways that old Doctor Who fans would find tedious, as long as they don't wreck the plot.
But there was a better way to build it into throughout the story.
Yeah, and it was like WikiLeaks for Doctor Who fans. It was just you know. This reminded me of Star Trek Discovery, which seems to have gone wrong in Series 5. You know, and they're on an alien planet, they're running down a corridor or something's happening and it's peril. And then suddenly they talk to each other about, how are you doing? Are you still dating that man? Yeah, but I've had this kind of mental health crisis. Oh, but I believe in you. And they have this little chat and then they get on with killing somebody. Mm-hmm. It's this nonsense. It starts to be written like RTD has these little emotional stepping stones where you have a little moment, then you just jump the plot along, then you have another emotional stepping stone, then another one. It's not what I would call a plot. But, you know, I could be arguing about criteria one there, Gary. I could be saying that's a burning issue.
That's what you just described is exactly what happened here in the scene where the story stops dead so they can stand in the corridor and basically summarize the plot of Church on Ruby Road when it starts snowing.
John, that nanny, remember, she told them to go and do something, didn't she? I can't remember, storage number 357 or something. And then they started having a chit-chat about he has two hats, plural, and all this lot. I mean, what is going on?
Yeah, but, you know, I'm less bothered by that because one thing I have noticed in this episode in comparison to the previous 3-4 years is how much of it, we might argue about the plot, we might argue about whether it was too light, whether it was too frothy, whether it was just for children. But in terms of what preceded it, the Chibnall era, who's a hack, by the way, I just found the writing so much better. And so these moments where there is a stop in the corridor, we do a bit of exposition or we do a bit of harking back to something else, was a lot better done. So it didn't clang as much to me as it used to do back in the Jodie Whittaker era. So yeah, there are moments in all dramas where that stuff like this has to happen, and in a fast-moving show like Doctor Who, particularly when it's speeded up as much as this one was, there has to come a point where you have to have a bit of exposition, catch up on something, develop the wider story arc for over the season, as indeed they did. But I thought this was done quite well, actually, because it's in the hands of a much better writer.
And compared to most pilot episodes, I say, and granted, this is not a pilot, but most pilot episodes in the United States are very clunky. Generally, pilots are the worst. Which is
Michelle,
the first episode.
Michelle, would you be calling this a pilot? I know it was this, you know.
No, as I said, this was not a pilot, but generally, first when you're coming out the bat of a reboot.
I mean,
was it great? No, but compared to other pilots I've seen or other reboots, this was a lot better.
But interesting, we are judging this, Brendan, as the first story of Series 1, as it's now being called in Doctor Who. But interestingly, I found out today that on Disney, it's been shown as episode 2, with the Church on Ruby Road being episode 1. So this isn't a season opener, if you like. This isn't everybody's introduction to this series, as it is perhaps to us now in May, of 5 months after the Christmas special. Those people who will access it on the streaming service, this is episode 2.
Yeah, I actually noticed that too, John. I was thinking that was more of a sop to like the binge watchers who know where to start and everything. But for all intents and purposes, I mean, in my view, this is really, this is the episode where the Disney has put all of their marketing power behind, all the subway ads, all of it. I mean, even to see the way that back in December, Church on Ruby Road was treated on Disney Plus here, it was basically just tossed onto the channel with little to no fanfare. So this really, I think, in my mind, can be considered, you know, as Michelle said, the official start. I just thought that, and that's why I guess I was expecting this episode to kind of act more like a mission statement for the new era, just like Rose did, like the 11th Hour did, to try to not necessarily include everything, but to be more of a indicator of, okay, this is what the show is, all of you newbies type of thing.
Yeah. Now, Hugh, you mentioned this was a 10-minute children in need sketch stretched out to 45 minutes, and you also wanted to mention the butterfly effect as one of your main issues, didn't you?
So, I mean, obviously, you see the butterfly thing done in the trailer, and you're wondering, is this going to do anything? It seems to me an indication of having too much money. It also is one of those classic things with Who of introducing something that is problematic in terms of the story, which you ignore at the time. So, Braid of Morbius and the previous Doctors, Romana using up different bodies in terms of regenerations. This just seemed to be one of those things to put in a joke, spend a huge amount of money, and create huge amounts of problems if you're doing time paradoxes. So,
Yeah.
It wasn't needed. It didn't add anything, and it causes problems.
Yeah, and as we come through, I just want to address, because some people are new to our channel and maybe don't know how we do this. We have 3 criteria we go through. We as objectively as we can, really decipher and evaluate an episode. And I'd like to do it in isolation. I don't care what came before it or what's coming after it. Every story should be treated in isolation. Is it well written? Is it well produced? Does it engage? And so, Chris B, I feel like the panel is afraid to say what they really feel. I will be asking them to judge every aspect, and they cannot hide.
Yeah, can I say, Brendan? I'm just sort of like saving my powder in terms of that. I think we're looking at specific issues, and that's fine. I don't think that the chat needs to worry about about me censoring myself.
I'm curious, does anybody else on the panel think now they shouldn't have given away that visual joke about her turning into the creature? They shouldn't have blown that in the trailer?
Absolutely. It's just bad thinking.
Yeah,
that's the problem with modern day trailers, period, is they show way too much. And that's in every part of the genre, every part of the industry.
Yeah, I agree, Michelle. They showed way too much of the first episode, and they missed a really good opportunity of Ruby standing on the butterfly, and they could have actually made an entire episode out of that. They missed that chance.
I thought, well, I think we've discussed it before, haven't we, Rachel? That we thought there was a plot device going on here that would actually, there'd be a parallel thing and couldn't change it. Yeah. But as it was the classic RTD. He did it in season 1. He asks for Big Ben to be made into a model so you can do a nice model crash shot and it could go in the trailer. He was thinking of the trailer. He does think of marketing, but the marketing in this time, I agree with you. In the end, and it happened with Devil's Cord, I saw 2 minutes of Devil's Cord before the program was shown. I saw 2 minutes of Maestro. And you think, gosh, you're either confident to actually give it all away, or you're lacking confidence because you're really trying to get all those kind of hooks in now. It's almost like TikTok, isn't it? Like, here's a quick hit. That's all we're going to do with it. So I find their marketing's confusing. So if Chris B thinks I'm sitting on the fence, you'll find I'm blooming well not. I think their marketing is all over the shop. And when we get into criteria 1, I think tonally Doctor Who was all over the shop. I didn't know whether I was supposed to laugh, cry, give up, vomit. I didn't know what I was meant to do. I certainly wasn't meant to be scared, because they never do scare anymore. And nobody dies, of course. So yeah, don't you worry. There's no fence sitting here at all. So, while we're on this one, though, I do want to kind of make sure our panel's kind of livened up. Now, Michelle, you wanted to give them a good old nanny tick on off, didn't you, the Doctor Who production team?
I think the language, I did once for the Doctor say hell and the giggle, that was enough. The language needs to be toned down a bit. If you want to see the Doctor cuss, watch the bloopers from the, that's a completely different. I think they need to tone down the language. Using cuss words is a way of being edgy. Now, the nanny bleeping, that was funny because, again, that's not the Doctor. That's a side character. Right. And I do have a sense of humor about, the bleep buns. They're funny. But the writing of the Doctor, they need to tone down his language again, because he's supposed to be above this. And also it makes them looks like they're trying to be edgy and cool, and it just falls flat.
Anyone else want to pick up on that one? Rachel?
For example, shouting "boogeyman" at the babies to scare them.
That was weird.
I didn't like that.
Weird. It
That
was
would have
weird.
that would have been the sort of thing when I was
Made me
growing up
laugh.
that my dad would have done to me. But my dad is not a TV character, you know. He's my dad. But the doctor, why is the doctor doing that sort of thing? That's
Well,
weird. Wow.
Can I just say that actually is probably the most doctory thing that he would do, because he's supposed to be a bit uncertain how to behave in certain circumstances and perhaps not do the conventional thing, not because he's quirky or weird, but because he's just not perhaps socially
it makes me think of
honest. So I actually found that the most doctory thing, one of the most doctory things in the episode, and it actually made me laugh out loud.
It makes me think of Capaldi with the cards when he's being very awkward and he goes, "Doctor, we talked about this," and he's going through it, and he's like, one of them is, "I am sorry for the death of your friend / spouse / pet."
Yes, that was.
And he reads it out like, "I am very sorry for your." And again, because he is a 2000, how many? Lord, how old he is now? Alien and social conventions, and that's also very dad, is to scare the kids.
But the brilliant thing about that scene, I know we're talking about Capaldi now, Michelle, the brilliant thing about that scene is that it was a very, very funny line that told you a lot about the doctor's character, that he needed those cards.
Yeah, and the fact that also that Clara and him had to have a whole off-screen discussion about this as they're writing the cards out for him.
Now,
but the problem with this is that that's got character that is consistent. The problem with him shouting at Bogeyman there was it wasn't consistent with him suddenly bowing down and chatting with Popsicle, which was a bit weird, and at the same time him having said he was scared of it. So it's the inconsistency in writing that I have the problem with. If it had been consistent, or even if it had been sort of going through regeneration and this happening, but it was just thrown in.
Yeah,
right. Well,
I don't really understand why he did it.
12 talk to kids, I don't see that as different.
On the writing front, can I bring in John? Your burning issue was about the writing regarding RTD1, RTD2, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I dare say I'm not alone in thinking that a fair chunk of the sort of, first 15 minutes we sort of all seen before. We get the usual companion introduction to the TARDIS. That's all great. Then we get sort of info dump about the Doctor's past. But when we get to the spaceship, it becomes very end of the world, right up until the staging in front of the screen and the phone. And Ruby calling her mother in the same way that Rose had called Jackie. So it makes you think two things about that, in that he either Russell Davies has got a good way of doing this. So, if it works, stick with it and just do it again. And those of us who liked it the first time round can appreciate it anew, done in a second circumstance. Or, and this might be nearer the mark, that he doesn't really care what older fans think about it. This has been directly aimed at people who will not have seen this in season 1 in 2005. So it doesn't really matter. And that either makes us think, has he run out of ideas? Probably not. Or more likely, is it the fact that because it's not aimed at us, he doesn't care for those fans who thinks, hey, wait a minute, have we done this before? Because he's aiming at Gen Z and those sort of people who he wants to bring on anew to this. So that was a bit of a worry, although I do think it's a very good scene. It's a very good way of encapsulating that distance in time. He did it again with Donna and talking about her in Wild Blue Yonder, talking about how the distance away her family was. And he's very good at striking that emotional connection with being out there in the stars and your family being millions of years dead or billions of years away. But I think essentially by rebooting that scene, he's virtually told us, for those of you who've seen it before, don't care, I'm aiming it at a whole new, brand new, either international audience or younger audience.
Right. Thank you for that. Now, burning issues is normally the things to get off our chest for therapy. As I'll keep saying, Crispy, there'll be no sitting on the fence. There's too many areas to attack. Here's one. I went through all the reviews, as a few of the streamers have, and you can decide whether it's one or the t'other. And the panelists are going to be asked whether they agree or not on what the reviews said. And so we'll be making them, nail their colours to the mast, There is no hiding place here. So let me just take you through, first of all. You can see on the left-hand side are some of the complaints about space babies. And obviously on the right-hand side in green are some of the actual compliments. So if you want to just take a look at that, I'll pull one or two out while people are reading, because I am tending to the left-hand side, surprisingly. So Crispy, you know, when it says promising, if less than perfect, I don't know if that says too much, I have to say, but to me, it wasn't promising at all. And I will even challenge that. I thought the puerile toilet humor was classic RTD. That does not mean I approve of it. I think he has to start to show, if he's such a skilled award-winning writer, can he show me he can adapt? Because he seems to give me the same old, same old, same old, same old. He's obsessed with the same things, writes in the same way. He cannot adapt. This is supposed to be for a different market to the ones for years and years, to the ones for queer as folk. Has anyone told him? So, you know, if that's sitting on the fence, join the gang. The plot bulges loosely. It goes to absurd lengths to accommodate new fans. I think we've mentioned that, for example, on the panel, and I totally agree. So there's a few of the ideas there. Rachel, is there anything there that you kind of really want to attack or agree with from what you saw there? I'll just bring it up again for a moment.
Puerile toilet humor. I wasn't too keen on the ending. That the spaceship just basically needed a giant poop in order to get to wherever it was that they needed to go. Hated that. Didn't like the snot too much, but I suppose if we got Boogeyman, then that's what we're gonna get.
I know. I'm over this now. I'm over the farting Slovene. I'm over the burping wheelie bins. It's like, look, I've got a sense of humor, but he's doing it again and again and again. And to me, he's infantilizing the nation. We are actually all quite clever, you know. And if anybody's into science fiction, do you know, teenagers are reading 1984 for goodness sake. They're not talking about babies filling nappies and the methane propelling them to a planet.
Okay.
He isn't getting it.
So it is. There are parts of it that is funny. I won't lie about that. But the thing is, they try to make it too funny, and it doesn't balance out with the more serious stuff that needs to they tried to address in the episode, and I think it just didn't. Yeah, it wasn't a good balance.
Yeah,
I think that's crucial. That, you know, this is why I go back to it being a children in need special. If you just done, oh look, there's an alien made of snot and some babies can say some funny things and walk about with flamethrowers, and you get there with the nappies, and it would sort of work. If I'm then throwing in refugees and abortion as subjects, then it's just tonally mental.
Yeah. I mean, while you're talking, Hugh, is there anything there you want to pick up on? I know I can't show you everything. I'm trying to just be fair so everybody can see. But is there anything you want to pick on there?
Yeah, I think there's quite a lot of, you know, it's got the awkward part of the political narrative there. You know, it just seems to me that this was not thought out. I know that I think he's a better basic writer than Chris Chibnall, but it made me miss Chris Chibnall.
Yeah. It's sad. John, is there anything you want to agree with or pick up on from what you've seen there, in whether you agree with the reviews or not? I've covered a span.
Yeah, it's, you know, I could probably have predicted most of the things that I've said on either side of those. I think most of those could have been said even without seeing the episode. And yeah, you know, we can all go on about the toilet humour and the infantile humour, but, you know, there is a huge history in this country of Carry On, Benny Hill, all this sort of stuff, where if it's not body parts, it's body sounds and bodily functions that the British are laughing at. So there is a broad tradition in this country of these sort of things being laughed at. Doctor Who's not unusual in doing that. So let's not get carried away with ourselves that this is in some way not adult because it happens to be talking about poos and smells and whatever. You know, there's a history of this in Doctor Who, there's a history of this in British comedy, there's a history of this in British drama. So let's just put it into perspective there. Whether or not it tipped over the balance is a different argument. But this is what we say. I presume that the reason why this was invested so light and frothily was for two reasons. One, for those international audience who had seen Doctor Who before, the latter half had become very continuity heavy, had become very dark, and had become very, very serious in terms of the Timeless Child and everything that Jodie was having an angst about. But also, it just had to welcome an audience and say, you know, this is, as they call it themselves, a cosmic joy ride. So they're not going to start. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean that I think they're doing the right thing. I'm just trying to explain, as far as I can see, their choices, that they had to have something which people are going to laugh with, enjoy the frights, enjoy the jump scares, but at the same point think, you know, there's a bit of something for everybody in this. Now, whether or not they got the balance right is the subject of this review, perhaps, but nonetheless, I can see through what they were on, and I'm not going to be too pole-faced. Do you see what I did there? Pole-faced.
I mean,
the toilet humour, because I think there's a long tradition of that in British humour.
There's a long tradition, but done by better writers in a better production with more polished.
It made me laugh.
No, things can make me laugh. It doesn't mean I'm going to give an outstanding review. I mean, gosh, one joke.
Neither will I, but it still made me laugh.
Yeah, one joke is not going to please me. By God, it's a Disney big production, high values. My God, I expect more than one joke from a Christmas cracker.
Get your nappy changed, you'll feel better.
No, it's true. This is we're reviewing a whole concept, a whole program, a whole delivered, highly marketed, expensively marketed franchise. And it to me, I'm sorry. Yes, I know he's going to do poo humor because RTD's obsessed with it. Doesn't mean he's going to get blooming outstanding off me, though. My God, he's going to.
I didn't suggest for a minute you should give it outstanding just for that alone. But we were talking about the toilet humour, so I was addressing the toilet humour and saying that Doctor Who is not unusual in British comedy, light drama, whatever, in using toilet humour as a means to an end.
And I don't think anyone said that that's the case. I think sort of quite often RTD does overuse it, but I don't have a problem with. I actually didn't mind the slitheen in terms of that. I thought it was a reasonable joke, but it was just that's why it just felt like everything else didn't fit. There was nothing that fitted. This was a narrative mess.
Yeah. Gary, what are you thinking on that?
Well, I've been listening to everybody's great points and kind of scrutinizing the list you have up. I mean, I'm kind of mixed. I think that the fact that there was, like, as this says, puerile toilet humor mixed with obviously stuff that's intended for adults, I still can't understand. The original question, who's this targeted to? I think that it all adds up to a very schizophrenic episode tonally, where it says the plot bulges loosely, goes to absurd lengths. I actually think, for me, it's like the welds are showing. Normally, RTD is a lot smoother in terms of getting disparate things, plot elements of an episode to fit together. But this seems like it was just kind of welded all together. Mid-ranking Who installment, I would not put it even. I would put it on the lower ranking, where it says fun but forgettable. I would actually say I would actually describe it more as silly and inconsequential, which is one of the reasons why, as the first episode, I had problems with, because I think that was the wrong tone to strike. Because I'm sure we'll get into it later. If this was the first exposure that somebody had to Doctor Who in this hour, was there enough here to make them come back? Yeah. For me, I would have said no for myself because it was too silly and inconsequential. Where it says the awkward dotting of narrative with political, social, that's absolutely true. I mean, to me, I thought the remarkably unsubtle kind of pro-abortion comment, was kind of, bad enough, but then they give a shout out for the pro-immigration, I guess the necessity, what it was it, of just turning up on someone else's shores. I guess that was a shout out for the American left. And then at the end, the visual of the big blast of space poop. I mean, that's a reference to Joe Biden, I think, so I'm okay with that one. But where it says on the green side, the stylishly handled reintroduction of mystery. Again, kind of clunky, but I guess a necessity for anybody who hadn't seen Church on Ruby Road. Still very much Doctor Who. I vehemently disagree with that. I'm sure we'll get into that later.
Yeah,
the fears of the show being Disneyfied, unfounded. There were a lot of kind of Disneyfications in this, but the one that I wanted to also get on is the what's the one at the bottom on the green where it says still feels like the Doctor Who we know and love. No, I don't want to come off as just kind of like knee-jerk slamming everything. I will point out that I guess in the grand tradition of wheelchairs with rocket launchers, we now have strollers with flamethrowers. So I guess there's a theme developing there.
Yeah.
I don't know where that's going to ultimately lead to, but but on the positive side, I do have to say that we now have the Bogeyman, which is the one action figure that we can all create for ourselves without spending a dime. So I guess
like Creighton's cousin this morning.
Very true. Well, so Crispy can see we're on different sides of things. We will make our opinion clear as we go through this, but we actually do want to give our first award of the night. So basically, this will be fun because I bet my kind of. Here we go. So you've seen this already, and I just go through. You'll see. We need to set our first award. So here we go.
Oh.
Yes, the Razon Award.
I worn a tux today.
Well, you see, you didn't get the memo, did you? This is. I'm wearing a t-shirt. So we've got a balance to this review when we go through the criteria in a moment and we do all the details. I just want to show you we've done the contentious issues. We've got things off our chest, but we now want to actually call somebody out. Some performance in front of the camera or behind the camera that we think is worthy of the Razon Award. So basically, I'm just going to recalibrate things so that you can see some of the cast and crew names. But does anyone want to call out? I will say very quickly while I'm fiddling with this, that, and the other, that I actually am, believe it or not, I am going to actually award my Razon Award, and we'll see if we get collective to Ncuti, because I think he carried the show. I think when we get into all the details, I'm not saying he was off the scale, he wasn't getting an Oscar, but I have to say Ncuti Gatwa held most of it together with his personality, and he is in that way he's got enough to be a doctor. Whether he's given the right lines to be a doctor, we'll talk about in a minute, but I'm giving my Razon Award to Ncuti Gatwa. So Rachel, where are you thinking of going with your award? Michelle?
Oh, Michelle. Oh, sorry. I'm going to go also Ncuti Gatwa. Was he given the best Doctor Who script ever? No, but he did carry it. I still want to see that definitive Doctor moment, and maybe we'll get it coming up in the third episode, being a little more meatier. But he did carry. He did, and he does. And I know this is going to be controversial. I think he's charismatic. I enjoy him, and he did carry a very difficult episode.
Right. John, I'll put it big screen for a moment because I don't know where you want to go with this, but we've got 2 votes for Ncuti. Who would you want to give a call out and give an award to?
It has to be Ncuti. It absolutely does, because he's got it. He has a really good voice for playing the Doctor and delivers his lines very well. He just has a twinkle and a smile that just works. And so far, it's been quite light with him. I'm looking forward to seeing some of the darker moments, some of the more serious moments. But so far, despite the fact that he doesn't dress like the Doctor, he's a bit too much like a model on a catwalk, but fighting through showing off his physique. He's still coming across as our quirky Gallifreyan, purely even on the boogeyman moment, which I absolutely loved. So there you go.
Yeah, and I agree because I never felt that Jodie was the same Doctor as the other ones. This Ncuti does feel like he is the Time Lord. He's got this, and also there's some better nods to the history of the show in the first 2 episodes than the 60th anniversary. You get this idea of that he is this very old being.
So Gary, I'll put it big screen again. It looks so shooty at the moment. He's looking as though he's getting a
I would. I have 2. I'm not going to go with Ncuti by himself because in total, I thought that the kind of incessant smiling, even when he's describing the genocide of his planet and his people being gone, put me off. Because I think that smiling alone doesn't create a character, but I do want to give my Razzie Award to the interaction between him and Millie.
Yeah,
I thought when they were together, their interaction was good. They were a good team, even though several times it kind of tilted over into being too happy peppy. But overall, I liked the interaction with them together. On the screen that you were putting up with all the other credits, I wanted to kind of give a shout out to the hairdresser who could still make Millie Gibson look good even when she was covered in snot.
Yeah, I mean, and to be honest, the visual effects and stuff like that. I mean, I know people have called out the dubbing of the babies necessarily, the mouth synchronization.
Oh, that's a whole other thing we need to get into.
And we will get into that for criteria too. Hugh, where would you like to go with your Razon award?
Yeah, I think I'm probably with the design in terms of that. It looks fantastic yet again. Now, we've talked about worries about things looking fantastic, but it was a good looking space station, good looking monster. Sort of like some of the special effects I think were a bit dodgy, but I'd live with that. I think the design's good.
Right. So So we'll get Rachael back. She's got a connection issue at the moment, so we'll plod on. So Razon award. It looks as though shooty. And as well, you've heard what people have said. I won't repeat. There's no need to do that. So, criteria 1: if nobody's seen the show before, well, if you have, I've changed it slightly just to hopefully make it easier. Criteria 1 is the safeguarding of Doctor Who, I call it. And underneath that, I've got, did it feel like Doctor Who? Did that episode, did that story feel like Doctor Who? Did it feel like the Doctor? Did it feel like the TARDIS? Did it feel like, did it feel like it had the shape and the rhythm of it? Does the Doctor have recognizable Doctor traits? So I've called it True Who or Boohoo. So basically, with that in mind, John, where would you like to go? What's your judgment? Tell us first of all, by the way, if I just show our audience, how would you judge criteria 1 there?
I surprise you. I'm going to give it a good, because despite some clumsy writing, despite the fact it was very light and frothy, despite the fact that there was an over-reliance, perhaps, on toilet humour, it's still very much Doctor Who. And that came across by the way Ncuti is characterised. Some of the words he was made to say were... I think this all boils down to the writing. We could quibble about what Russell Davies has done, but he knows who the Doctor is, and he knows how to... He might not know properly how to write Doctor Who as far as some people are concerned anymore, but he knows the Doctor, he knows how to write from, and he certainly knows this version of the Doctor. This is, although it's a different version of the Doctor, this is very much a flamboyant Doctor, both in word and deed and in his actions. He is still very much the Doctor, and I felt that within 2 episodes more than I've done for the last 3-4 years, where I was just given, a very hectic flying around performance of someone who was faking quirkiness and eccentricity. Ncuti very much got that from me. And you've got to remember, throughout, although we might disagree with, again, the babies and space babies and all that was happening in it, nonetheless, the Doctor arrived in the TARDIS with a mystery to solve. And that's very much classic Doctor Who. Now, we might not have liked what that mystery was and the resolution, but it was still pretty much safely Doctor Who. There was nothing done there that was different. And let's not forget the fact that many opening stories, so let's count this as an opening story, let's forget the Church on Ruby Road, opening story seasons for Doctor Who are not indicative of what comes later. I give you Time in the Rani, I give you Spearhead from Space. It's not indicative, perhaps, of the whole era. And I might think, and I might be wrong here, that the reason I'm giving this a good is because I believe that Russell Davies's intention here is to entice us in very light, very frothy, and get darker as we go along towards this season. And I believe that he's lulling us into a false sense of security. If I'm wrong, I'll come along and eat my hat or a full nappy, but we'll see.
I can see what you're saying, John. It's just that you know that some people are not going to give him that time. But I understand what you're saying.
And you know, Brendan, good for them. That's entirely their decision to make. But
that's not television scheduling, is it? If you're going to risk losing,
it's not unfair. People can leave it or take it or leave it, and people always will. But as I say, I refer the honourable gentleman to Time in the Rani. You know, a lot of people jump ship with Doctor Who on that one, but it certainly wasn't indicative of the McCoy Doctor as a whole. So if people choose to jump ship, then the Jungle Drums are loud and broadcast wide enough for people to think, well, actually, come back and see this again. It sits there forever now. They will always be able to come back, change their minds and go and look at it. If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong.
John,
but I still think this is very identifiably, well, not the best, it's still very identifiably in format Doctor Who.
Right. I just want to bring up for you, John, to respond to John Yulden, who's obviously one of our fellow panelists. He's got 2 points. Let me just show you them. The first one is, this is going wild on Twitter, John. The Doctor runs away now. And he made a big thing out of the dialogue. And also, I disagree. I didn't see anything that made me think he's the Doctor. Felt like a young adult who stole the TARDIS. Do you want to address that, John? I mean, the running away thing.
I don't give a monkey's what's saying on Twitter. Twitter is not anything but a shouting booth for a lot of people with very, very loud opinions. And good luck to them. Express their opinions, but Twitter means absolutely nothing to me.
What about the merit of the argument, though?
What argument?
The Doctor running away.
Doctor's always run away. That's why Doctor Who's all about running down corridors. The Doctor's always run away, then he runs back when he has to. There was why did his dialogue stay? You've asked me a question, let me answer it. There was also a legitimate reason for the Doctor to run away. And that was explained within the context of the episode. So, look, if people want to, based on all the nonsense that went on with Russell Davies and Ncuti Gatwa before that, and based on the general lightheartedness of this episode to condemn a whole era, then they can go onto Twitter and do that. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. And while this will never, ever be even mid-ranking Doctor Who for me, it'll always be somewhere middle towards the bottom. It's still very much in a category that is Doctor Who. And I believe that the era is still finding its feet. And I think we will get darker as we go along.
Well, this is supposed to be an award-winning writer. I'm hoping he can find his feet a bit faster. Gary, how are you going to judge it on the criteria 1? If I just show you again.
Yeah, could you show that again?
Yep, certainly.
Thank you. I would go in the needs improvement column because I think it's fine to have a Doctor who is, more upbeat. But I think that for me that there was too much of that, which in a lot of scenes for me dissipated a sense of the drama and jeopardy, because it didn't seem like it, except for him running away, that he was really fazed by anything. He was laughing, smiling at everything. I thought that there were a number of, that we'll probably get to later, I thought that there was just a number of gaping plot holes in this story, discontinuities. I actually thought that, I don't know if that fits into this category, I thought that the character of Ruby was much better served in Church on Ruby Road than she was in this particular episode. I think that, you hope that the quality of the writing does ramp up, but it just seemed, I just had a problem with the overly kind of silly tone of this. I just thought it wasn't, not that you have to start with dark, but you just have to start with something that has a little bit more weight to it if this is the sample episode that new viewers are going to be using to decide if they want to continue on with the show.
There's a lot I'm going to say in a minute on, because criteria one is the plot, it's the characterization, and is it Doctor Who? But obviously we don't want to answer every one because we'd be here for multiple hours. It depends what one of people want to pick on. Michelle, I know you are fairly upbeat about this episode. So first of all, your rating and why?
I will give it the good. I'll give it a 7.5 or 7. You know, it felt like Doctor Who. Unlike some of the Jodie era, which did not feel like Doctor Who to me, it just felt like Doctor Who. I just can't get too glum about this episode, and I respect everyone's opinions, and I understand why you're feeling the way you do. I just can't get this glum about a silly little bit of froth that is it the greatest Doctor Who episode I've ever seen? Heck no. Will ever be a Caves of Anderzani? No. But at the same time, you know, it is what it is. The world is so glum right now. I just need a little pick-me-up. I got a little pick-me-up for 49 minutes. It did feel like Doctor Who. I do like Ncuti Gatwa. It is what it is. And also at the same time, on social media, this episode is getting the 7 to the 8 rating score. People are enjoying it. Are they saying it's the best darn thing they've ever seen? No, but they are enjoying it. So the 3-star review that's good. That's decent. That's on Goodreads. I like the book. So people are on social media, on even the Doctor Who Appreciation Society, other major serious Doctor Who rating social media channels are primarily enjoying this. It is the podcasters and some of the more serious fans that are having the most issues with it.
It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I know because I've done it on my saloon show, which is on Tuesdays, normally 5 p.m. when I talk about one of Russell Davies' interviews or something, and it's been said many times, and me and Hugh did the program on it, didn't we, Hugh? Where they said the Bad Wolf team talked about he has darkness in his, he can see darkness in humanity, and he wants to bring lightness. So that kind of affirms what you're saying, Michelle, that what we needed was a nice light episode. And
I have a feeling it is going to get a lot more darker as we go on. I think this is just like the appetizer to kind of bring you in. And a lot of the promotions, they said what makes Doctor Who so great, and explaining to the American audience was every episode is going to be different. One episode you're going to have a silly lark, the gunfighters, and then the next episode you're going to have a classic episode. Even in the first series of Eccleston, there are some rough episodes in there. We got the farting aliens right next to the brilliance of the empty child.
What I'm interested in, Michelle, is we're comparing different time zones in a way, aren't we? Yeah, this is classic. This is true Who if it's written by Russell Davies, because as you said, he gives you the diet in a season. But actually, a Philip Hinchcliffe era gave you Gothic for the whole season. And it's interesting, isn't it? Because there'll be some fans who are going, can't we just go and get a tone right, the style right, a genre, a consistency? And of course, you came into it a little bit later, Michelle, didn't you? And of course, you like that era. Yeah, you like that Russell Davies era where you get a varied diet.
Mm-hmm. I came in really during the Moffat era. So and then I also love, it's like I love Doctor Who. I love the different eras. I love that it's a different show. And ever this era doesn't hit it for you, that's fine. There's going to be another era of it, and this is going to be a new era, and this is going to bring in new fans. Is it something that the older fans are going to necessarily always agree on? No, but for the show to survive, we are going to need to bring in new fans. And in the United States, in today's ranking, Doctor Who is the number 4 most watched show on Disney Plus, and that's behind Bluey, The Simpsons, and one other Grey's Anatomy or Shogun. So this is picking up new viewers. There was a lot of people. I know someone was mentioning, okay, the ratings were low. That's for terrestrial. people were a lot of people were watching it at midnight, and a lot of people were watching it when they first got up. So we are living in a new world where the rules that we're used to don't apply to, where we used to look at 5.14 was the lowest for in the classic era. We're in a different world now.
Yeah, and we will, as you know, we'll mention the ratings later specifically. So I didn't want to rush you there. Hugh,
no, you're fine.
Hugh, your judgment on Criterion One.
Special measures. It felt like it wasn't written by RTD. It was written by ChatGPT. It has bits of what the Doctor's meant to do stuck together as if someone who had heard someone tell someone else about something that they'd once seen had stuck it together. I can't get over the fact that you can stick in abortion, which is maybe the world's most thorny subject whenever you come into this, as a throwaway line. It was way over the length that it should have been. It used, as I say, a joke about the butterfly effect, which undermines the entirety of the series, and could only be written by someone who had no understanding of science fiction whatsoever. I can see, and where I'll agree with John and Michelle on this, I can see that it is opening to other people, and it's maybe not mine. I go back to the 11-year-old me, and I would have hated it even more than I do now.
Yeah, and I'm going to be very brief on it in some ways, but basically I agree with you, Hugh. I'm giving it special measures. I was bored. I thought the plot was all over the shop. I thought it was for kids. I couldn't believe when I was hearing people say they loved it, and I thought, dear God, it didn't challenge my brain in any shape or form. This is science fiction. It's not soap opera where you could just get people saying, I'm getting divorced, or I'm having a baby, the usual drivel. This is science fiction. And I didn't see. I saw the concepts because RTD is very good at colouring in. It's like a colouring book of Doctor Who. It's like Carry On Doctor Who. It's like Doctor Who light. And basically he goes, there you go, the butterfly effect. I've nicked it from A Sound of Thunder, Ray Bradbury. There you go. I'll do it in a second for, as Hugh says, a quick joke. A very, very expensive, indulgent gag. My God, every other producer in Doctor Who must have been so jealous, wishing they could have spent all that money just on a gag. My God. Rachel, what do you want to say regarding your judgment? You might need to give us a volume.
I'll try again. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
I'm doing well tonight, and sorry about that. Okay. Well, did it feel like Doctor Who? It had its moments, but I could also sense the Disney presence. I think actually what you got on the screen right there is one of the Disneyfications that we potentially have seen. I wondered if they had some sort of input on that. But, you know, like I say, it had its moments. Was it the best episode ever? Absolutely not. I actually think it was weak for a beginning of a Doctor Who series. I actually think that. There were some things that I did like that I thought were very Doctor Who-ish. Like, so there's a bit at the end where the Doctor scans Ruby's data. I like that there was a little bit of an homage to having the screen back on the TARDIS wall.
Yeah.
I quite like that. And there was a brief moment where the Doctor was in jeopardy, but it was too brief. It was too short. That should have been longer. And he tells Ruby about crossing timelines and things like that. But that was also very Doctor Who. But overall, the majority of it just didn't feel like Doctor Who to me. And I actually think it was too fast-paced of an episode. I think it should have at least branched out to its hour. Or you could have even done a second episode. I mean, not just like babies, but...
What rating would you give it, Rachel, then?
Probably a 4 out of 10.
So the 4 out of 10, let's just check where we are. Needs improvement, right? So I'm just noting as we go.
Brendan, is this a place really quick to mention that I thought there was just too much fantasy in it? You emphasized the sci-fi aspect of what it should be. I thought between, as people have mentioned, the side gag of Ruby turning into a dinosaur kind of hybrid and then back to human. We have the doctor giving the breath of life to the butterfly and magically restoring it. We have the doctor whistling and the stroller magically appears under its own power. We have snow physically manifesting in the corridor because of a memory, I guess. It's like there were just too many just out of the blue fantasy elements that I just thought were out of place.
This is when it does turn to Marmite, and I grant this. I knew this debate would be interesting because we're all in different places with this, and it's trying to glue it together. I mean, and we're all allowed to be strident on it. If you don't like fantasy, this is going to be a problem, and it's just you have to hope that RTD has made a good enough choice that he somehow keeps you going. Because if it turns people away, it's no good him thinking this is his version of Harry Potter, because Harry Potter will do fantasy better. You know, I've said on a few streams now, I'm sick of RTD saying I want to be like Buffy, I want to be like Stranger Things. He needs to actually make Doctor Who as distinctive that actually all those Hollywood franchises want to copy Doctor Who. But instead, he wants to always imitate or emulate. And of course, when you imitate and emulate, you are always the cheap imitation. You're never as good. And that's what worries me about what he's trying to do. Fantasy doesn't do it for me, so I've got real problems, and that's going to become clear, I think. So I'm with you on that one, Gary. So, okay, we've got that one. So the second criteria, folks, just to keep you up to speed, is where you will go. Let me get in the right place. Yes, it's the old production. So some of you might say, well, actually, I want to talk about the selection of certain actors and what they did, the direction. It could be the design. It could be the script, the dialogue. It could be the music. It's up to you where you go with this. I'm not directing this, but basically you're judging it, whether it's outstanding downwards on that. So if I started with Michelle, what would you judge it as for this one?
I'll give it again a 7. I think Murray Gold was the less Murray Gold that I've ever seen. And this is somebody who came in during the Moffat era, used to, and also the big bombastic themes of his music. So I think this is the most toned down Murray Gold we've seen probably since probably 2005. And definitely it has more of the cinematic, the movie feel to it. So again, that Disney budget is coming into effect. So I thought it was a good use of special effects. The babies weren't perfect, but then again, you are dealing with babies, and there's still a joke in Hollywood: never work with an actor should never work with babies or animals. And that had to have been a challenge to feed film with a dozen babies with only 2 hours before they need to have their nappy in their bottle. So that had to have been a challenge alone to deal with that many babies on set. I have to say her being covered in snot was hysterical. You always think about these things. You're all on space, and you expect you're going to have leakages and all these babies on board. So again, I think it was a good use. It definitely is a step improvement from, like, say, the dodgy special effects of Power of the Doctor. I always kind of think, and this is just my personal 2 cents. I think it's funny. 1 minute we're saying the special effects are too good or the special effects are too bad. I think that's just the comedy of being a Doctor Who fan. And again, it's just a human condition.
Okay, so I've noted that one. So, John, where would you like to go with this area? And as we've always known when we've done lots of these reviews before, you can pick and go in your direction on your making that judgment.
Yeah, all of these things add together to give what should be, when you're watching Doctor Who, a feeling of excitement and adventure and roller coaster and all that. And again, I may well be judging this episode not so much on what it was, but what it wasn't, because what it wasn't was what we've had for the last few years. And I'm being quite upfront about that. For the first time in a few years, I almost reached the edge of my seat at certain points. Now, that's a combination of the writing, the music, the direction, the performances, all those things added together. And I breathe a huge sigh of relief that this man is back in charge again, because whether or not this is a quality episode or not, it's just somebody is back in charge of making a proper adventure with the highs and the lows that goes with it, giving the intrigue along the way. There was more intrigue written into this episode about Ruby's backstory, about the Doctor's backstory. And I won't go into episode 2 because I know some people haven't seen it. But again, little hints and tips are given not only to the Doctor's background, but also pitching forward to something that maybe will come again into play. And I think that's confidence. So watching that, I feel as if I'm excited, I'm engaged, I'm enjoying it, I'm going with it, I'm getting towards the edge of my seat again, none of which I've been able to do for quite some years. So yeah, although as a standalone episode, it will never be a favourite, but I'm still rating this as good because a combination of all those things came together in this episode, although not a particularly great episode, but came together in this episode and gave Doctor Who something that's been missing for a lot of years.
Right, I'm going to follow up to ask you a bit more, John. Okay, so because I think people will be wondering, as I am, and that this is where the debate comes in, isn't it? Because I don't know where was the edge of the seat moment for you? Because I you can tell was struggling. So please tell us.
Oh, but no, I said no. I didn't. I said I was getting towards the edge of my seat, and by that I mean that. For the last few years, I sat back and watched Doctor Who and felt fairly unmoved by it, completely unmoved by it in most occurrences. Whereas in most of the Russell Davies episodes, you can feel yourself rise up in your chair, as the episode progresses. And any drama, melodrama like Doctor Who, with those moments which is to get you excited, intrigued, wondering what's coming next, have been lacking. They were there again now. Whether or not it's intriguing as to Millie Gibson's background as the character of Ruby Sunday, whether it's not that moment where he makes us feel sympathy for Ruby and her mother being such a distance away, or whether it's just the Doctor running down corridors again, and it being done quite expertly and well directed, with a great soundtrack behind it again. We have sorely missed the input of Murray Gold over the last few years. And because he knows how to accentuate those moments in a way that the muzak and ambient noise created by Sega Nakanola never did. So I'll just qualify. I was getting towards the edge of my seat. And what I'm hoping is that as this season progresses, I'll eventually be falling off it.
Okay. Now, what I'm intrigued by with you, Hugh, is as you judge it, you've told me many times, it's one of those I always remember, you always saying, when, for example, if you were judging the writing, don't tell me all these clues are going to thread throughout the series. Is it a good episode? Yeah. Are you finding that's getting tedious? Because John's referencing that in a way, all these little intrigues and stuff,
So, I mean, one of the things that I really struggled with was they did the exposition, and he talks about being adopted. He talks about being adopted by the Time Lords, but my reading of the Timeless Children is they're not the Time Lords whenever he's taken in, and he's not adopted, he's taken in and tortured. Now, if you're going to use it, you should use the details. And if you don't, if we're now saying he's hiding that for whatever reason, it then means that someone who comes into it now, who hasn't seen it, is then being given totally the wrong impression. In terms of this criteria, I think it needs improvement. I think there's good stuff, as I said, in terms of the design. I've noted that someone pointed out that the drawings on the wall don't make any sense doing this. The entirety of it as a piece of logic makes no sense whatsoever. But it was a nice space station. I thought the monster was okay in terms of doing this. I thought the stuff with the FX was patchy, but Michelle's right. If you're going to have babies, don't really have much choice, but it'll be a bit ropey. It's just difficult, given that I think the writing was so off the scale bad in terms of writing a story that everything else suffers from it. I will say that I didn't think it was boring, which I found World Beyonder to be. It did zip along, but that has its own problems because it just zipped along past any number of plot holes.
Yeah, I know. I'm keeping my powder dry as much as I can, but it's obvious. Gary, honestly, what's your judgment on? As you know, we're trying to be picking on elements of production. So,
Right.
you know, how does
Right.
it come across to you? Did they use their production resources well enough to actually craft a story? So how are you judging this one?
Okay. For just focusing on non-story, non-acting elements, I guess I'll just start with the biggest for me, which kind of, you know, pulled me out several times. I thought that the CGI mouse, and I hope I'm not coming across as like needlessly like pedantic or being critical for critical sake. I really am trying not to sound like that. But I just thought that for me, I thought that the CGI mouths of the babies were just weird. They were distracting and creepy to me. And I thought that the eyes, what I call like the Polar Express eyes, this kind of non-human, just kind of glazed, unblinking look. Just, you know what I kept thinking about when every time they showed a close-up of a baby with the eyes? I thought about Quint in Jaws with that line where he goes, lifeless eyes, black eyes, like a doll's eye. That's what I kept thinking of every time I saw one of these babies' eyes. I thought of Robert Shaw, you know, talking about the shark's eyes in Jaws. In terms of I mean, I got to be honest. I mean, since, you know, Jeff Goldblum is my spirit god, I did like the little Jurassic Park painting. You know, I thought that was you know, kind of good. I thought that the design of the ship, I thought was good. I liked the fact that a lot of the action scenes, we're going to call them action scenes, done by watching like scratchy view screens that would go off, that would shut off at key points. I thought that was a good use of not just having a camera there for the action, but it was like having us kind of rely on what we're able to get through the view screens.
And a tribute to Alien.
Yeah, I just thought that was an interesting way to go. I thought that the one other element that I thought was, and I guess this qualifies as technical, is the sonic. With the kind of like on-screen demo of how the actual consumer version can be used, like as a mouse or a portable hard drive. They actually even show you, you know, how it plugs in. I was actually surprised at that point there wasn't a pop-up saying now only £39.99 at Disney.com, you know, pointing to the Sonic, you know, to direct people where they can buy it. But obviously with Disney money behind it, it's not going to look bad. So for me, it was a mix of important things like the titular babies just not working at all for me, but other parts like the design of the ship. Oh, one last thing. I guess this kind of qualifies as production effect. The arrival of the TARDIS onto the ship. The fact that now I guess that we're using the TARDIS actually looks like it's in physical flight as it spins around toward the ship and then it lands and skids. And I just thought in that moment, okay, so I guess we're not doing the materialization anymore. I guess because kind of skidding and sparking looks cooler. I guess visually, I guess maybe they're thinking more than just materialization does. So I thought that was unfortunate.
I'm in two minds with that. I'm instantly triggered by it. However, I remember years ago on YouTube, there was a fan did an amazing one where the TARDIS is spinning through space, as we've seen it do in the classic series everywhere, spinning through space. Then as it comes into land, materialize, as it's materializing, it's also spinning and going through a wood, and then it kind of crash lands and stops by a tree. And so it kind of is moving and materializing. What we're not seeing in this series is the materializing bit that goes with that effect. I think they've seen that effect, and I as a fan loved that. I thought, God, can't the new series do that? Go on, Michelle.
I think we're going back to the joke of the Doctor being a bad driver, which you couldn't do about women.
True.
The
True.
idea that he's a bad driver, a bad pilot. And you can't have that joke about a woman because you just can't have a sexist joke. But I think we're going back into the long-standing joke about it because it's kind of been there for even the classic era that the Doctor was slightly a bad driver.
It's a shame the TARDIS didn't land on the butterfly, and then he'd have been in trouble, wouldn't he? But
go back to the TARDIS goes where she wants to go, and you're driving with the brakes on, hence the sound. I think just going into the long-standing joke of the Doctor's being slightly a bad driver now.
So on the scoring there, Gary, what did we give it in the end? Sorry, I was just
for the production elements.
Yes.
I would give it. I would give it 6.5. I don't want to keep it in the needs. I don't want to just stick it in the needs improvement category below, but it's not like enough for the good. So I'm being a wuss and saying it's between.
So Rachael,
is that okay?
That's fine. I'm making all the notes here. It's all gobbledygook to me. I'll have to make sense of it. And Rachael, where would you go with this one?
Well, I think just following on from that, there is definitely much more cinematic approach to Doctor Who. Is certainly looking more like a mini film nowadays, isn't it? But I thought long and hard, and I wasn't really sure where I wanted to go with it. So I thought maybe I would look at the actors, that being my profession, and I know I'll be doing that tomorrow. Because I know some people want my opinion on it tomorrow. So I'm going to say, I'll give my score now, 7 out of 10.
Right.
Okay. So I as an actress, I will never say an actor is bad, and I'll never say they're one-dimensional or anything like that, because I've been there. I know what it feels like. It takes a lot of work to get there. I will critique, but I will try and critique fairly. So overall, I thought the acting was fine. I actually thought the standout was Millie Gibson. She had just about enough inquisitiveness for entering the TARDIS. She played off of it really well. She looked inspired. I thought she did a good job, actually. There is room for improvement, of course, but she will get there as her character becomes more developed over a period of time. Who played the nanny? I can't remember her name.
Oh yes, I've got a name.
It was Queen Charlotte in Bridgerton.
Yeah, I can get it up eventually. But yeah, Rachael, I had her on screen a minute ago, didn't I? There she is. Yeah,
she was good. I liked her. I actually kind of wish that they introduced her sooner, so that she could bounce off, because obviously you're with babies that don't really talk, and I don't know if the babies were voiced by children. It sounds like they were. They were voiced by children. Yeah. So there's child actors obviously have a long way to develop their acting skills, so you can sort of sense where they need to work. So I think it would have been beneficial if she had been introduced earlier, so we can have more interaction and just have the babies be babies, so to speak. Although they're supposed to be about 6 years old, aren't they? Yeah. I think the voice direction with the babies could have been taken a bit further and just like had the children really work on their deliveries a bit more. I think they could have definitely done with that. But the children are great. I think they are great. Now let's talk about Ncuti. I think he was better than he was in the Christmas episode. He certainly slowed it down a lot more, and I think that will work in his favor. I think he has his slower deliveries are much better than his fast-paced deliveries, and I find it more believable there. Yeah. I think I don't know if he's got some hesitation about playing the Doctor. I feel like there is. I'm aware that he knows it's a big responsibility. I'm aware of that, but I just feel like he's a bit nervous. So he's not sure as of yet, perhaps, what direction he's going to take it in. I don't think he's quite there with that yet. I think he will get there.
It's an interesting one, Rachael, though, isn't it? Because with what you're just saying, Rachael, about Ncuti trying to find himself as a doctor, and every doctor's had to do that to a degree, let's be honest. Because Sometimes they say the script was for the old Doctor, so basically they just get the same lines really, and they just add what they can. But don't you think, as an actor, it's more problematic for somebody like Ncuti nowadays? Not Ncuti per se, but for an actor now, because Russell Davies, he's throwing so many things in that he has to do at the same time. So he's got to deal with this episode. He's got to act like he's an orphan. He's got to act like he's bothered about this. There's so many levels. It's like, for God's sake, let him find himself first.
Yeah, I agree. He would have to find himself. If Ncuti applies method acting, he would have had to gone about that very, very quickly in order to get that developed, because method acting can actually take a long time. So yeah, he would have had to have done that, and he would certainly, I would have hoped, at least gone back and looked at other doctors as well. In particular, I would say, because of the Timeless Child, even Jodie's doctor, to see how she decided to respond to that. Because if they're going down the adoption route, he needs to know how he's going to play that. So you need to take something from there. But they don't talk about the other doctors on set. And I really, really think that's important, especially when there's been 14 other incarnations. I just think it's so important to talk about the other doctors, you know, because there'll be something that a doctor that you do that a doctor would do that you like as the doctor. So you might like take that. For example, David Tennant had the glasses, and who was it had glasses? It was Peter Davison, wasn't it? Yeah, and things like that. So it's just these little things, and like the flipping of the coin and then reintroducing it with Peter Davison, and it's just those little things. And I think he needs to choose a specific facet to actually take on and take forward and put that into his version of the Doctor. I think he's got potential. I do. After watching the 2 episodes, but I still don't think at this present moment in time he knows what he's going to do with it. So but he has got potential. So
I'm just squeezing like Gary into good here, partly because the production itself looks brilliant and you expect it to. And it carries a lot of it. The main actors I'm happy with too. So of course you've got a lot of components that are working together. Murray Gold has clearly been directed that he's going to give lots of Disney flourishes. And there was a moment when we saw the Space Babies for the first time. I thought I was at a kid's first birthday party. It was all cutesy and twee. And I just thought, this is so Disney. This is like those Hollywood kids movies that I turn off. It's like, oh my God, this is just blah, blah, blah. So there was that element that pulled it down. And I know how good Murray Gold can be. He just needs pushing in whatever direction. And the thing that jars with me, that pulls me down a little bit, where I was hovering over improvement, is while the effects and the production values and everything is clearly there, it jars with seeing such a poor script. And so you've got a really rubbish story with brilliant effects and production values, and it jars. It really jars. I feel sorry for Disney. I feel sorry for those people who are producing this, who are putting all their life skills into this, and it's actually just so badly written. And so they're let down. You know, people are slagging off this episode out there, and you're thinking, but it was well made. And what a damn shame that is. So I'm borderline, but I'm giving it a good. Now, we give a Razon award, and there is obviously another version. I'll probably hit the wrong button, but go with me. It always makes it look funny. So don't worry, you're not coming on again. God, how many times do you want to come on? Yes, it's the Chameleon Award. So let me just kind of jazz that up. Yeah, you need a bit of that. So basically, the Chameleon Award, for those who do not know what we do, what the hell we do on this channel, is that I'm just trying to find it. The Chameleon Award is something that was really bad in the production, something that was really chronic, something that was really brought the side down. So it really is the reverse value of the Razon Award. So please, in the thread, join us on this one. Who would you award the Chameleon Award to? For example, recently, most of this panel did Terror of the Zygons. We didn't give a Chameleon Award because we thought it was an outstanding story. We couldn't find anything. And sometimes you have to just allow that. I'm saying I think there's possibilities here. So for the Chameleon Award, is there anything that you want to point out and criticize from the team? And before I just go to the team, I just want to remind everybody out there that we are trying to get to 300 subscribers. We have been going since the giggle. Believe it or not, we've been going through that period between the two lots of episodes. And you know, we've been doing well, but let's face it, it would be really nice and supportive of you if you've just found us and you like what we're doing. We're going to be on again tomorrow night doing the Devil's Chord at 7 p.m. And on Tuesday night at around 5 p.m. I will do a short 25 minute saloon where I decipher things and decode things. So please join us for that. Please like and subscribe. It will be really appreciated. So Chameleon Award, John, who are you going to award the dusty bin to?
Hello. Yeah. Everybody's been so nice about the monster. I didn't particularly like the monster. I didn't, and it wasn't because it was what he was made of. That didn't trouble me at all. I just found it very hard to distinguish what it looked like, whether it was CGI, whether it was a man in a costume or a woman in a costume. It was just very hard to tell. I could have done with a bit more lighting on it to have distinguished whatever features were there to see. I think there appeared to be quite long, snaky hands. I don't know if they were bogies or not, but whatever they were there. I would just have liked it to have seen it a bit more in action, to have been a bit more terrified by it. And I've always said on any of the shows we do here that I always prepare, in keeping with Doctor Who, a person in a costume, and it can be augmented by computer graphics if necessary these days. But essentially, I prefer a real costume, a real practical thing for the actors to interact with. And I just wasn't clear what this thing was, and as a result of that, it diminished the effect of it. So, Chameleon Award goes to the bogies.
So the costume designer, I think that might go under, possibly. Michelle, who are you giving your Chameleon Award to?
I agree with John on the Pokemon, the monster, and the resolution of who he was. Like, is it sentient? How is it sentient? And why is it worth keeping? I get that this is an episode about children, so we'd want to keep the casualty numbers down low. I mean, that was one of the complaints about Church on Ruby Road, was that the goblins were eating babies, so we're trying to keep it a little more baby friendly. But yeah, I guess it's now a pound puppy. But yeah, the booger monster was not my personal favorite.
For some of the design, etc., yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah. Gary, where would you go on this one?
Oh well, I would had I not already mentioned it, I would have definitely talked about the baby effects here with the eyes and everything. I would actually award this to not that canon even exists anymore, but just the bizarre changes to canon and what we've known about the Doctor. So apparently now the Doctor's not his name, just a societal title. It was bestowed on him, and he's called the Doctor because just that's the name he's used so often.
Yeah.
What? Mm-hmm. Say the Doctor for 1,000 years and it becomes my name. I was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And that really annoyed me. I would say that well, that would be my.
Well, don't worry, because I've just put it on the screen, Gary. And the point of this is, I didn't know when he referred to the Conquistador, and I think the Bishop as well. Suddenly, people were saying, "Oh, this is Big Finish," and I thought, "Oh gosh, they really are pulling in the whole universe." And I know Rachael you do a fair bit of Big Finish, don't you?
I listened to it. I haven't done voiceover for them.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
There was one,
mean,
and there was one name there that was notable by its absence as he was running out all those titles.
The monk.
Yeah.
Right.
which one? The Master?
Master.
Master and the monk, but the monk too.
the monk, yeah.
Yes, no, I agree. Yes, and we have been mentioning that, Gary. We're not the only stream, of course, but I think a lot of streams
And
have
this
been.
isn't. This is more personal. I don't know how all of you experience the show in terms of watching it, but I watched it on Disney Plus last night. Not a new subscriber. I want you to say I did not pay for it. It's bundled in part of my cable package, so I don't want anybody thinking I actually paid for it. But I've got to say, and this is the honest truth. So I think this would be one of my Razzies, Brendan. That for me, literally about every 8 minutes on Disney Plus, so for about 6 times during the show, 6 maybe 7 times during the show, the episode smash cuts to ads about 8 times during the show. I saw ads for rust spray, for European wax body wash, for multivitamins, for Omaha steaks, for Chick-fil-A, for vacation rentals, for Miracle Grow soil, for dog food, and 3 different times for Gillette women's body razors, including one that was specifically in big bold letters for pubic hair. I hope I didn't demonetize you by saying that, but that was actually on screen on Disney Plus. So that's something that pulls you out of an episode, I just got to say.
Not every depends and depends on how you bundle it. Mine is the bundle, and we pay for the non-ads. So not every, and also every Washington BBC America, we would have had to seen the ads too. So it's not every streaming service that has that. It just depends on whatever your plan, your package is.
It did make me hungry for Chick-fil-A.
Yeah, and that particular Razor commercial is annoying as heck. I never want to hear that word's used again in the commercial.
So Hugh, your Chameleon award?
100% to Russell Davis. That was a disaster of writing.
Yes. Do you know, we're on the same wavelength. I've written it down here. Russell Davies, I think that was one of the worst episodes I've ever seen written for Doctor Who. And I mean that. I don't do hyperbole all the time. We could go into all the... I've listed all the... If anyone ever asks me a question or an example, I've got 20 there. But yes, do you want to elaborate yourself, Hugh, on just one or two?
I think we've covered a lot of it. You know, sort of the butterfly thing, which I thought was shockingly bad. The fact that it did feel like a children in need special for the entirety of it, drawn out for was it 50 minutes? God, it felt like longer. But it just, when John was getting to the edge of his seat, I was just about to give up and fall asleep. There is no jeopardy. You know, there are reasons why you do Everybody Lives episodes. If the monster was just a lovely big bundle of snot that just needed a cuddle, then there's no jeopardy. They just everything, and of course putting in messages which have no formulation within that, no part of the narrative, just an utter mess. Say that was ChatGPT without much information.
He's done years and years. He's done the refugee issue. I didn't think he needed to do it with a one-liner. That hardly does it any service. And of course, it's a more complicated issue. There's another noun used, like economic migrant as well, but he needs to look at the whole issue rather than just make it done so easily and flippantly, because actually I don't like dumbing down to children. Why don't we speak to children like we did in Genesis of the Daleks? Let's talk up to them, not down to them, as if every issue is solved by a soundbite. So I agree with that. There was no resolution. I mean, I'll save it because it's unique, and the next minute it's a howling wolf. I mean, when did that happen? How did he train it? He was there. If this was like an Aliens remake, when, come here, and she uses certain language and she takes him on, why does he save the creature, and then how does he train it? Or is that necessary? He took a risk there, because one minute it's chasing them down corridors and it looks as though it wants to kill them, and the next minute he thinks, do you know, I'm going to save you and you will understand me and you will be trainable. He's suddenly Dr. Doolittle, not Doctor Who. I just thought, oh, come on. And yes, we were sat there, and this is criteria 3, so I won't say too much, but basically, were you engaged or not? And I wasn't engaged. So, of course, my Chameleon award has to go to the blooming writer, who everybody gives plaudits to. But I have to say, sorry, RTD, you need to do a little bit better than that. So coming to criteria 3, our final one here. Let's have a look. Were you engaged? And that's the only one you can be judging on. You can't go anywhere else. Were you engaged? And it's your honest truth. So that, you know, there will be debate on this. It may be down to story writing. It may be down to various things. Within this, and Gary mentioned it earlier, and I think, sorry, Michelle did, the ratings. And so, of course, as everybody may have seen, the Disney ratings, they don't give you the numbers, but it was in the top 4 for today. In Britain, the overnights were 2.6 million for the Space Babies episode, and the next one we can discuss tomorrow night, but it went down a bit. 2.6 million, now we don't know what to say. We've heard the excuses. They may be actually very relevant and contextual, which is it was a very sunny day in Britain. You know, come on, this is when the kids can go out. The streaming was at midnight, so that might have lanced the boil and people's interest was peaked there. And we haven't got those figures yet. So, of course...
I certainly watched it out of sync. So I watched it about 12 o'clock yesterday.
Yeah.
In the afternoon. So that wouldn't show us watching it, and it should show us streaming.
Mind you, Hugh, it's not fair, you know. If somebody watches this show, our stream tonight, and then they stop and then go away and watch the next part, YouTube just make sure that's one view. They also make sure that if I went to my mum's, I'll still have the same phone being used, so it's only one view. But obviously, if I watch it 20 times on iPlayer, it counts as 20 views. Oh, I tell you what, they know how to do it, don't they? My God. So
I don't understand that excuse about the weather. I mean, did Eurovision got what, 7.4?
Got 7.6.
So does that mean, did the weather suddenly turn bad to send 5.5 million people scurrying inside?
I think it's...
We're talking about Britain, though. They do have like 5 minutes of sunshine.
No, it is later in the evening, so it would be quite nice, but you're getting towards the end of it, and it's a live show, which sort of, you could stream Eurovision, but particularly last night, there'd be no point in streaming it, because what you want to see is whether there was any fuss. It's a different type of show. And Doctor Who, sort of like in terms of the recent ones, whenever they've been on before Strictly, because Strictly is in general a live show, it doesn't do as well.
I mean, it is. There's factors to bring in, but obviously the truth is whether I hear what Hugh was saying, and I'm nodding away about the engagement. So you've heard me on that one, Rachel. As you watched it on your bus, plane, or helicopter or train, which is hard, isn't it? If you watch sitting on your settee, it's very different to actually doing it how you did. But did you find you were entertained, engaged, and therefore it fulfills this criteria?
No, I wasn't throughout. I had moments where I was like listening, but like you say, this obviously I may need to do a rewatch because it might just be that I was traveling. But just on the initial watch, I wasn't engaged throughout. The best points were the hint of Ruby potentially crossing over her own timeline. I actually really liked that bit. The crossover of snow. Now, I actually wondered if that was dust, because there's been mention of dust. So I thought that might have been it. And the Doctor sacrificing himself to save the boogeyman. I think that those were the bits that really kept me the most interested. But overall, I think Russell T Davies has underestimated the potential that his actors actually have, and in that episode, and didn't give them the proper stuff to do, and didn't give them good enough writing to help them make it engaging for us.
So when you think, I know it's hard, but if I was forcing you now, this is an episode. I'll be frank, mine is special measures because me and Jamie in our house last night, number one, we were bored, and secondly, we said we will never watch that again in our life. So basically, it has to be special measures for me. Where would you go with that one, do you reckon?
I would sit probably somewhere between 3 and 4. I'm not too sure. I think I probably will need to watch it again just to make it fair, but I'd say 3.5 at this present moment in time.
Okay, fair enough. John, what would you be thinking on this one?
I've sounded throughout the entire this evening as if I'm being overly generous to this, and maybe I have been. I've invested a lot of goodwill in this.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people have. We've been let down by the promotion, by the pre-publicity, by the association of the producer and his star with some causes and issues which have really nothing to do with producing an entertainment program or a drama program of the likes of Doctor Who. Doctor Who is chiefly escapism. It's about a chance to get away from the real world and not be reminded about some of the things that torment us all. The world's a difficult place enough without Doctor Who reminding us of how bad it is. So I feel that while this is not the best example of Doctor Who by any manner of means, that it's still Doctor Who on a trajectory which is engaging me more than it has done for several times. That's a theme I've tried to keep going throughout all of this. If this was to be the state of Doctor Who for the entirety of this season, then I'd be pretty worried. I might get pretty peed off pretty quickly. But, I've seen the second episode. I know it's different. I know it's light and I know it's frothy, but it's different. So I know that there is a certain lightness at the moment, maybe heading towards something coming a little bit darker, and the hints are at that in the second episode too, without giving anything away. But I was engaged. I'm always will give this show, which I love, the benefit of the doubt. Even during its darkest and grimmest days, I have stuck with it, and I will continue to stick with it. Will I watch this episode again? Yes, I will, because my husband George and I enjoyed it. Will I rewatch it again after that? Probably not for a long time. Maybe on a season rewatch in a year or two's time. And that's about where it sits with me. But I still believe this is a new iteration, a new era, a new start for Doctor Who, and I remain enthusiastic.
So is that good? Sorry, I can't remember what you said now. Was that good?
It's good. It's good.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks, John. Michelle.
I will give it good. As someone who is easily distracted, as someone who sometimes struggles to silence and to focus on one thing at a time to relax, I was engaged by it. I was engaged by watching both episodes. And for me to not be constantly on the phone or on my computer or reading or being distracted by something else, I was engaged by the episode. I enjoyed having 2 hours of escapism. It left me happy. I'm still happy. It took me away as escapism. It took me away from the troubles of the world. I had a kind of a bad week. I enjoyed this moment that I spent with the Doctor.
Michelle, can I ask you a different question? Because I am interested, because this is the debate that's going on out there with Doctor Who fans, as you probably appreciate. You're a clever woman. You write books, all the rest of it. Yeah, you I know your context and the job and all the rest of it, and you're a manager and everything. And you like your sci-fi. So I'm honestly thinking, but okay, you escape from the world for 1 hour 40 minutes. I buy that. That's fair enough. I cannot argue with that. But do you also look for challenging sci-fi as well? Because this isn't in that category, is it?
Yes and no, but not every episode of Doctor Who is going to be challenging. I don't expect every episode to be Knock My Socks Off, Caves of Enerzani, or Blink, or, The Doctor Dances. It is just one episode. Now, this is going to be like the whole series. Then we got some issues we got to talk about. But this is really just one episode out of many. And not every episode of Doctor Who in the whole 60 years has been amazing, knock your socks off, challenging. It's just, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed it for an hour. It's okay to like bad stuff. It's okay.
It certainly is. And I think what's going to be lovely as we go through this, so people, if they tune into the Sensory again and again, know that John and Michelle are roughly in the same ballpark with that argument. And it's going to be interesting how it pans through the series. I know it's going to be intriguing. Hugh, where do you go on this last criteria?
It's obviously special measures. We've covered the writing and the structure of it. I wasn't, as I said earlier, I wasn't actually bored. Because it was just, but I was horrified. I was watching it with my wife Kath, who is not a Doctor Who fan, but has seen and watched most of the New Who with me, and she's never going to watch it again on the basis of that. So, so if I did say she'd some work to do this weekend. I said, if you don't do that work, then I'm going to show you the next episode. I can't believe the writing was that bad. If that had been, as I say, if it had been ChatGPT, I wouldn't be surprised. If Russell had done 10 minutes for children and he'd knocked it off in 15, then I accept that was a reasonable thing to do. It was awful.
And it worries me because I did want him back, and I do like what he did overall with the first era of his time.
We've covered episodes where and I've said previously whenever we've reviewed episodes that if it wasn't for Russell Davies, I don't think that the first series would have continued. I think it was the crucial aspect of that. But last night, if he spent as long writing that as I had to watch it, then he was wasting his time as well as mine.
Were you having a moment, Hugh? Because when we both looked at that documentary with Russell Davies in November, he mentioned, didn't he, to Alan Yentob a couple of times that while he was driving into work, he had this idea and, I've written this, I saw this in the canteen and I wrote this. And look, every writer has inspiration. I get that. But I don't know if RTD has suddenly been inspired by a tiny gimmick. It's not a sci-fi concept. And he makes it into, as you know, a show. And it hasn't got enough substance.
So I think it was Rachael who mentioned Look Who's Talking earlier.
Yeah.
It felt to me that he'd seen Look Who's Talking and noticed that it had Who in the title.
Yeah. I mean, so I wish Chris B was still here because there's no fence sitting here from anybody at all. Gary, where do you stand on this final criteria?
I think I'm with Rachael. It did not engage me. There was actually a lot of elements throughout the show which actually acted to disengage me throughout. The mood and the atmosphere, which didn't seem to me to match the story, the lack of real jeopardy. A lot of what Hugh said resonated with me. The particular political injections in the script sat ill with me. I actually think that I was wondering after the well, let me just say first, so I had a hard time caring about the problem or the jeopardy or even the solution, even during the climactic scene where the Doctor and the boogeyman are, in the airlock. I realized that Russell T Davies was trying to get me to care about the fate of a piece of sentient snot with claws. And I thought, I really can't go that far, Russell. But and then after the episode was over, I was asking myself, had this been the first episode of the return of Doctor Who back in 2005, would we still be around 19 years later talking about the 14th season? I kind of think not. And I hope that this doesn't get me disinvited from the channel, but I've got to say that, and I sincerely believe this, I actually think that this type of episode would have worked better back in Jodie's first season. It matched the tone and the flavor of that season way more than I think what it's signaling for this season. I could totally see Jodie down there trying to communicate with the monster. I could see Graham bonding with, what was her name? Yolanda? Who was the man?
Yes.
No, Graham would have bonded.
Jocelyn Stonesale.
Graham would have bonded with Jocelyn. You would have had Yaz doing the babysitting, and then you would have Ryan off in the corner doing nothing. So I think that would have been yeah. He would have sucked his. He would have been teaching the babies how to suck their thumbs over in the corner, since he has a master's in that.
The babies would have to rush across to him and stop him using the flamethrower, because they would be best at it.
So I actually, honestly, I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm crazy. I just think that it would have fit better in that. Now, as far as where it is in this season, I'm actually, based on listening to everybody here, wondering if one of the problems with this episode was that I actually think it might have worked better maybe later in the season as kind of like a placeholder between two kind of more serious episodes, as kind of like a palate cleanser, a placeholder, say before the season ramps up to a conclusion or whatever. It might have fit better in that kind of spot as opposed to the big debut of coming back. I don't know.
Just to say my apologies, but I'm going to have to go now.
Yep.
But thanks everyone. I enjoyed it. Thanks to everyone in the chat.
Okay. Again,
as Jamie says, and as the doctor says, push the button and subscribe.
Yes, and
push the button.
Push the button, Max.
So, John, are you going as well? Is that what you were saying?
Yes, it's time for my cocoa.
It is. Well, I appreciate it. As Crispy has just said, nobody's sitting on the fence here, so he appreciates that and he's been enjoying it. So thanks for your contributions, John. No Hollywood music at the end, sorry. So I was going to say, when you go to a party or you go somewhere and everybody's having a really good laugh and you don't get it, and you feel really out of it. That's how I felt watching Space Babies, because as we were saying about the chemistry between Millie and Ncuti, they've obviously been told to look as though they're having a good time. I've been told they get on as well. So you've got it firing on all cylinders. But I felt as a viewer, it wasn't directed at me. They looked almost smug. They looked really happy with each other. I wanted them to get a room. I wanted them to go nightclubbing together. Oh. I just thought, but I'm happy for you, but can I have a bit? Because it just wasn't crossing the fourth wall at all. And I found that a shame. I can see they get on, and I can see the dialogue is to make them get on as well. But it just looked too insular. It wasn't reading to me. Does anyone have a comment on that? Because that's where my problem.
I do. I think that's actually more directorial than anything else. Because they're playing it as it's written in the script, and they're bringing it to life, because obviously words don't have meaning until they're brought to life by the actors. But the director needs to take responsibility and actually get them to focus on how they're going to play that across to get the audience to connect with it. And I think that might just be an oversight. It might be, I haven't watched the second episode yet, but it might get different with different directors. So I think it's just something that needed to be worked on directorially. That's just my opinion. So. Well,
just for a second, because Retrodoc, Gary and Rachel are on tomorrow night with me. Michelle, you have to work. I know, that's a shame. But Devil's Code, we are reviewing it tomorrow night, and I think it's going to be, and especially when Rachel hasn't seen it yet, it's going to be very tasty. She doesn't know.
I haven't seen it yet either, Rachel.
Yeah. Well, you too. You've committed yourself. Michelle, it's going to be interesting, isn't it?
I want to ask Rachel, do you think we could actually fake our way through the stream even if we don't watch it?
No,
I don't think we're going to get away with that.
There is, I would know in seconds if we've not watched it.
I had to try.
He would, because I know I'm going to get asked about one person tomorrow night.
Yeah.
So I have to make sure.
Can I just say, if I had $1 for every time Ncuti said space babies in the episode, I'd be able to retire tomorrow.
Yeah.
There's a joke about doing and that does tone down in the next episode. And also the push the button, that's all taken out, that repetitiveness. But I did hear one great joke about someone about to take a shot every time he says space babies, you'll be drunk 15 minutes in.
Do you know every time he mentioned push the button, all I could think about was Dee Dee from Dexter's Laboratory going, ew, what does this button do? And she presses it. It just kept making me think of that.
There's a great Simpsons episode where Homer is mistaken as a pilot, and he's trying to bluff his way to taking the plane up, and he goes to push the button, and the co-pilot stops him and says, "We need that to live."
Right. Well, I've got a thing here. TARDIS Travels says to Rachel and Gary for tomorrow, and you'll see them. Please tune in tomorrow night to watch it. Chat, if you watch it, you'll be saying what the. So I'm dying to see what you like tomorrow.
And one thing I got to point out before we go, we haven't given Jocelyn a lot of attention in this episode. It did strike me that the fact that so she's supposedly an accountant, and she's been able to keep the software and the hardware going through patchwork for 6 years, even though her idea of how to do a repair is to pound on a pipe with a wrench. I'm going, how did you survive like 6 days, much less 6 years, if that's, your idea of spaceship repair? But that's just
But Gary, I didn't.
It's an Alexa system, and I just set everybody's off.
As I'm flicking through these to get to it, I didn't get lots of things. I mean, okay, the babies weren't babies; there were 6, and they were cleverer than just a baby. Although they acted as though they were babies at other points.
No, I thought they were adults just sucking baby bodies. Wasn't it that?
But they're 6 years old. I think they're mentally advanced evolution, but still trapped in a smaller body. It's probably saying that we can live longer, but in human bodies. So
a bit Benjamin Button, wasn't it? It's a bit But my thing was you had all those gadgets, and we've learned how to press that from here, because obviously they've got a baby body and they can't actually navigate or coordinate very well. But honestly, to run a spaceship like that, and then of course the credibility was pushed to the limit. Did anybody, and I'm dying to hear what you all say, is a computer, a machine, its educational software got to the point where it created a monster, it created a fairy story, and it created another part of the spaceship. And I mean, what? Really?
Well, I think I like the idea of a malfunctioning ship.
Mm-hmm.
I do like that idea. But I think it could have been done a bit differently. I don't really know how, but I think it could have been done differently and played out for longer. There should have been more jeopardy with a malfunctioning ship, I think. Yeah. Is what I'm saying. But I like the idea. It just needed more to it.
They missed a trick. They really missed a trick.
I think so, yeah.
With the whole translation gag, the one that Michelle was talking about before. Michelle, you said you had some problems. I mean, I agree with you. The fact that the doctor should never be the one saying it. Totally right. I did think they missed a trick, though. If they were going to do the alien kind of pastiche, they should have had either Ruby or Jocelyn down there holding something and then saying the line, get away from her, you, and then the last word would have been translated later. They wouldn't have had Sigourney Weaver's line, but it would have been kind of retranslated. That would have been
deity invoked.
Yes,
you'd have gone mad, Michelle. If that, cause I mean, if you had the Sigourney, this is what we were heading to, wasn't it? But I just thought, for God's sake, Russell Davies, that is laziness built on laziness. Come on,
and it's also the problem of having him write too many episodes.
Yeah, Yeah, I mean,
the guy is probably exhausted and knackered and trying to figure out. And again, and I said this before, and I could be right, I could be wrong, doesn't matter, that this season is going to be experimentation. It's going to be seeing what is thrown to the wall and see what sticks. I suspect next season, because there's going to be season 2, to be a much different season.
I'm fascinated how he's got that. It's an indulgence, though, Michelle, isn't it? Because who has two series? Who's got 2 series to play around? I understand what you're saying. Disney won't be sitting there for 2 years saying nothing. Yes, they'll be giving him notes all the time. And
they've already seen all the episodes, anyways. I mean, the fact that they're approving season 2, I mean, they're getting an idea that he's already getting the notes. I'm also suspecting there's going to be a lot of re-editing on these episodes too before we see them.
Yeah,
I also think the fact that Ruby's instant acceptance of the TARDIS with no sense of disorientation or wonder or anything like Rose or Amy had, I'm actually putting that in service to the Disney-fied mood of it all. Because it's like, no, she comes in, she thinks it's great, let's go. That I thought was more kind of Disneyfication too.
I'm glad you said that, because we'd noted it. Me and Jamie were saying this. I just said, Millie's fine and all the rest of it, but again, it's the lines, isn't it? And maybe, as Rachel would say, the direction, which is she's taken it like a duck to water too much. I mean, she's going, all right, so you're this, right? Thank you for that. You're that, right? Thank you. That's too. Doctor Who, it's a clever dramatic conceit, isn't it, Doctor Who? Because it's gobbledygook. It always has been in many ways, but it pretends to be realistic and enough touches that you go with it. And
those were the scenes we always, as fans, I mean, I know he's not writing for the fans, I get that, but those were the scenes that we always looked forward to. Like, how is Martha? What's her first line going to be when she sees it? Or, you know, what's Amy going to say when she goes in? We all anticipate what's going to be the, you know, or Bill or whoever. And that was kind of built up. You know, the doctor's going, what's her first thing going to be? And in this one, it's just kind of, oh, there's nothing, because she has no problem.
Yeah.
But it is nice to see, and then a companion who's actually kind of like wanting to be there and having fun versus the Yaz, and they go, oh, wow, it's huge. I mean, compare again, in many ways, I'm judging this from what we've seen in the past. And we've had 4 or 5 years of really boring companions like, oh, wow, it's nice. It's nice to see a companion who actually wants to be there.
She's got an element of critical inquiry, but it's a lame versus critical inquiry. I mean, she's asked him questions. Why police box? Are you the police?
And also, is it nice to have a companion not having the hots for the doctor?
Oh, definitely.
Absolutely.
And we were 2 episodes in, and someone else, you know, I picked and choose some of the other podcasts, just kind of get a little sampling. It is nice to see that we finally have 2 episodes in and there's no sexual tension.
Yeah. Definitely.
The final logic point that I was kind of confused about, throughout the episode, the kids are terrified by the mere sight of the boogeyman. Mm-hmm. And then, I mean, putting aside even what the doctor does to scare him, but just the sight of the boogeyman on screen freaks them out. And then all of a sudden at the end, he's their pal. And I was wondering, did I miss a scene or whatever? Because now they all love the boogeyman at the end. I go, wait, how did that connect? I thought there's got to be a deleted scene in there somewhere.
Yeah, and it, yeah,
and they may have, because it may have run over too. I mean, because Disney likes to go up over an hour. There may have been BBC may have said, no, we need to cut this down.
But this is what I mean, Michelle. That's why I think when we started this review, we talked about the kind of Doctor Who WikiLeaks exposition at the beginning, where I thought good writers either do in media res and you get right into it, don't you? Or there's what's the big dramatic trick now? I'm bored rigid with it, but everyone does it, which is you see the end and then you go backwards, so to speak, to see. Yeah. But no, he doesn't do that. He just goes once upon a time, basically. Chris Chibnall obviously did that worse with Timeless Children, and we had planets being shown to us as if I was in some sort of astronomy demonstration and all that sort of stuff. They've gone very big on exposition, Chibnall and RTD, to the point where I start to wonder, where are their dramatic skills? I really am disappointed. Very, very disappointed. I loved what he did with Crew's Folk. I loved what he did with Cucumber. There was a scene in that where the fella, he's on a date and he gets that golf club, I think it's a golf club kill him. And the whole episode is a countdown to his death. And it is so dramatically structured. This is the same writer who's just delivered that. And I'm shocked and dismayed, really. I grant Michelle and John are hoping that these are the kind of the light ones and we build. I'm sure we will. And I'm sure a Boom's going to be a lot better, of course. But, you know, you just think, can you be that sloppy at the beginning with only 8 episodes?
Well, I was thinking, you know, he's writing 6 of the 8 episodes.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking, so I was thinking, you know, why not parse out some of the explanation of the TARDIS's abilities and stuff throughout all 6 episodes you're writing, and throughout, why do we need to know everything about like the translation matrix and what it can do and where it can't go all in this episode? It's like, you know, you have time, you have 8 episodes, you know, you can drip feed a little bit about the TARDIS's capabilities to new viewers, you know, throughout. It doesn't all need to be now.
That's very typical in modern writing. Doesn't mean we like it, but that is a symptom of a larger problem. And also something we talk about in my field, history, is children and adults, their attention span is getting less and less, and COVID doesn't help either. And so there's this idea of, okay, you know, do we have to keep things going all the time? Because again, we have that I think goldfish now are winning out on longer attention spans than some humans. And again, you know, this could be a generational thing, because again, we all grew up before having smartphones in our hands as an entertainment device. We were taught to look out the window and count cows. Yeah. We're dealing in another generation where they're used to TikTok, where swipe. And so again, this is a generational thing that we're seeing now, and that we're old enough to see it and to communicate about it.
The thing is, Michelle, obviously, you know, my profession, I've just finished teaching for 30 years up to Oxbridge standard and up to 18-year-olds. And there's some really bright kids. And I'm not just saying one class.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
They're well read and all the rest of it. I can't see them wanting to touch Doctor Who at the moment. A bit like Hugh said, it's so embarrassing, space babies, when they're reading books voraciously. And that's when I worry about somebody like Russell T Davies, who's been good, but he's in a bubble now. And where's his experience telling me and him that Generation Z, or whatever we call them, want everything wham, bam, thank you, ma'am, very fast? Who said? Because I've been teaching these kids, they will listen to me for an hour, and that's not a discipline thing. You know, you have little things going on, but the kids will write a 45-minute essay. They will do this. I'm sorry, where's Russell Davies getting all his experience of this generation from?
Again, this is what Hollywood, what Disney is telling him to do. Again, his world and our world is 2 different things. And I'm just saying these are what things I have noticed in the wider society. It doesn't mean it goes for everybody, because there's everybody that's being different. Who knows? Maybe they're trying to appeal to the generation up from Bluey. You go Bluey to Doctor Who.
Yeah. It's the patronizing. I'm going to bring Cinnamon Toast Crunch in, who'll be on tomorrow night. Hiya, Cinnamon. Yes, I'm now a former English teacher, and he looks as though he could have been one of my students, because he's been saying in the thread, show not tell. And that's one of the most basic. I would tell kids off the poor things. If they were Russell Davies, they get away with it. Show, not tell. And yeah, you're totally right, Cinnamon. It's one of the most basic rules going.
That was one of Chibnall's biggest faults in his era. That he told, didn't show.
Yeah, too much. I know there has to be a bit. There always has to be a bit. It's where do you fit it in somehow. But
you know, I just want to just really quickly follow up to what Michelle was just saying. We've been having really good, intelligent discussion for over 2 hours, and I honestly am still no closer to be able to figure out your original question. Who was this episode aimed at? Yeah. Even with everything we've said, I still have no idea.
Yeah, because I've heard different things, and you know, Michelle, for example, contextually, you say, well, if I've had a bad week, this was just that lovely light relief. It was great. So it served a purpose. John is kind of agreeing with you, but also, as you are saying, but it better not do this every week. So there's an element of that. Yeah. So So you're thinking, right, who's the target audience? Because he can't expect that everyone's had a bad week at work, and escapism to the point where he waffles on about refugees and abortion and stuff is not quite what
And
I
that was
thought.
poorly added in. That was a poorly clunky. The episode could have gone perfectly well without always having to have the message.
It's stuff like that that's going to make this whole, if he continues on, it's going to make this whole season date instantly.
Oh, totally. But
Yeah,
I've got
some
two
of his
American.
stuff's already dated already. I mean, he does not have the timeless quality that the classic writers did.
I've got two Americans here, so I just want to ask you, because it's an apt question, which is clearly the plot line about, you know, pro-life basically getting it wrong. Yeah. That's really calling out the American debate, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Now, does that
and the support afterwards, the idea that ever you're pro-life, you somehow don't believe in supporting the child after born, which is not.
It's
That is a
oversimplifying
very
it.
bad and a very Hollywood elitist idea of those who have conflicted feelings on abortion.
Yeah, it's oversimplifying it to the point of incoherence.
That's what worries me. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to start the debate, but the point is, a soundbite. I'm sorry, but and I also find it interesting that now we've got the Disney connection and we're going global. That Doctor Who, this little British show, is suddenly making a commentary about American politics, and I'm thinking, oh, do you need to go there? That's dangerous, isn't it?
And also the refugee issue that's pointing at also the United States issue and in Britain. That could have been handled so much more differently. That was not needed. There's other ways you could do the support them after they're born, or the decreasing infertility issue. Why do we need to have a baby farm? Because there's obviously some reproduction issues going on this planet. Why why were they abandoned? Then this idea of it was done very poorly.
Yeah, you know what, Michelle, that's right. That's kind of a important part of the story is why were they abandoned in the first place?
And everybody was
no
against
explanation
on this
at all.
On this tape, like I protest, and Nanny kind of reminded me of Nanny from Muppet Babies. You never see her, but she's there. And they do all these fantastical things. Oh boy, God, I'm showing my age. Yeah, there was again. It's a decent episode. It's okay. It's a mid-rank episode.
Isn't it funny if he's having a go at pro-life? And again, I don't want to get into the politics, but I'm just calling the show. If he's trying to call out pro-lifers as on the wrong side of the debate in America, particularly, then you get all these cute little space babies that the doctor finds adorable. But if he's trying to sell the message that they should have all been aborted, I'm not quite sure how that's selling the message.
Which and also argues that he's in favor of having children be murdered.
Because they're cute, they're lovely,
they all have personalities.
I
mean, yeah, Eric. These are babies that all have value. They bring value to Nanny, and also will bring value to a future society. So there's so many things that are weird with this.
And as you said, Brendan, obviously, we're not going to at this point in the show kind of like jumping into the political angle, but the fact that RTD apparently, and I'm only basing on the episode that we've just been talking about, if he thinks that these kind of issues can be reduced down to a one-sentence explanation, that's just delusional.
Well, remember the backlash after Kill the Moon, which was also an allegory on abortion.
Yeah. It's hard, isn't it, when we have these discussions? Because I agree with a lot of what people are saying on the other side of the argument. So at certain points, me and John look as though we're on the opposite sides. But I get John saying the humor, the jokes. I like the jokes as well. The problem was, if you do jokes and then the sound bites, you are really talking down to the audience too much. You can have a joke in Genesis of the Daleks. I'll have to think of it, but you know what I mean? You can, because it's heavyweight and then you just have a light moment. Whereas I think this was just light. And then when it does heavy politics,
it should have stayed light. It should have stayed that even keel of light.
But to do a soundbite is that everything I want not from any politician in my country or maybe yours. I don't want politicians who talk down and make everything sound like a simple soundbite. And
Cinnamon has a great look. Put up Cinnamon's perfect comment.
Is that the British show one?
Yeah.
A British show should be careful treading on another country's politics.
Especially the ones
Cinnamon,
that
I
just
tell
don't
you what, if I could have sent you a link, I'd have got you on earlier. Yeah, it's true. Cinnamon will have plenty to say tomorrow night. Don't you worry. He has seen Devil's Card, so he's got an advantage over you two at the moment. But yes, no, you're right, Cinnamon.
I'm still going to see if I can fake my way through it. I'm kidding, Brendan.
I know. You can't, honey. No.
I'm an examiner.
You'll get busted right away.
Yeah. I'm a chief
I'll be like
examiner.
Calvin and Calvin and Hobbes up at the front trying to pretend I read the book.
You do realize that you got two former teachers here.
Yeah, three actually.
Oh, three?
Oh, yeah, well, there you go. Well, you don't want to be called out by another
That's right.
So, no, the point is, I think Cinnamon's right. You don't do that. It's not common courtesy, and it's dangerous, and it's silly. And it's
especially when you're trying to win over the American audience.
Yeah, and Doctor
Who, I don't understand British politics. I wouldn't come in and in one thing, God bless you all over on the other pond. You guys don't get our politics. I mean, you have a former prince say that the American Constitution to him was bonkers, and he didn't understand, and yet our Constitution protected him to say that.
It's just, I thought Doctor Who was escapism. And escapism where you don't get bogged down in contemporary politics, where, as we've said, it will date it so fast. And since it's an episode I don't think I'm ever going to watch again anyway, there's a few people I'm sure are on the brink of thinking, well, it's dated badly, I'm not going to listen to that tripe. And that's the problem. So, yes, I thought there were lots of issues that were problematic about it. I wanted to show you one bit of dialogue, actually, because I often do the dialogue doctors, and there were one or two things. Gary, you mentioned one of them, but I just wanted to show, when we get this element about the Doctor, I don't have a people, I don't have a home, but I don't have a job either. I don't have a boss or taxes or rent or bills to pay. I don't have a purpose or a cause or a mission. I have freedom. And they've gone for this free agent thing. I thought the Doctor was always, well, it wasn't a set official mission, but I always thought the Doctor did have a purpose and a mission, and he argued the toss in the War Games. I thought the Doctor actually did say, listen, I'm a force for goodness out there, let me keep doing that, and then they exiled him to Earth, blah, blah, blah. But the Time Lord saw that he could actually be useful, and he kind of did have a cause. This now sounds like he's just on a joyride, as the slogan says.
Well, Brendan, I mean, I think actually that this quote that you put up, this entire quote that you put up, answers your original question, because I think this quote maybe tells you that this episode is targeted to Gen Zs. Because isn't that a pretty succinct description of Gen Z? Please don't cancel me, everybody. I'm just kidding. They don't have a home, they don't have a job, they don't have a boss, they don't have bills to pay. I go, there's Gen Z all over.
Well, in many ways, it's also a Gen Z that is frustrated and is trying to find their place in the world. They're trying to find their place in the world. That's not being built in their favor. And also,
obviously, I'm just.
And I know you're joking, but still, and also, I think the Doctor's trying to. He's a new, he's a split version of himself, and he even admits, and he says, "Why did I run? I don't run. Why am I scared of this?" So this is definitely a Doctor that is trying to refigure himself out after going through the trauma of a bi-regeneration and being a new copy of himself.
But if you're a new viewer, just theoretical, if you're a new viewer that doesn't have years of investment into the program, and the main character says, I don't have a purpose or a cause or a mission, then does that in some way maybe beg the question, well, then why would I want to follow this character?
And actually,
I mean, that's risky.
And PD Rich, sorry, Rachel, I'll just say this, and please come in on what you were going to say. It's my old brain. PD Rich is just saying, to heal the universe, also known as why he was called the Doctor in the first place. Wasn't that in the Night of the Doctor with the Paul McGann? And when he talked to the Sisters of Khan, they were talking about what type of Doctor are you going to be, and cure, and da-da. And we've lost that because of this sloppy dialogue that he's now something else. Anyway, sorry, Rachel, what were you going to say?
What was I going to say? Yeah, that's it. So I have a friend who's not into Doctor Who, and I said to her yesterday that that Disney were having input, and it was essentially getting Disney-fied. And she loves Disney, and I love Disney too, but I just don't agree on some of their DEI at the moment. And she decided that she was going to go and watch it. But she watched The Church on Ruby Road, but because she didn't understand what was going on, she actually had to go back to classic Who in order to actually work out what was going on. So if it goes over her head, I'm sure it's going to go over people's heads as well, and they're going to have to go and look at earlier episodes. She went and looked at Tom Baker's. I was like, well, that's probably not the best place to start, but okay, fine. Start at the beginning is better, but yeah.
I find it interesting. You see, I find it interesting when you look at that whole piece of dialogue that, as you know, RTD says he doesn't like actors improvising or changing his dialogue because he stays up till 2 a.m. getting every button yet ready. So, oh my God, he's really bigged himself up. Well done, RTD. You're an award-winning writer. Right, let me look at your script then very carefully. So you're saying our hero of this Doctor Who show, because you've told us in all your interviews and marketing that you want to reach out to the mentally health kids, the kids who are struggling with their mental health, a hero for them who's emotionally fragile. Right, here we go. This is your person, everybody. Somebody who doesn't have a boss, doesn't have a home, doesn't have taxes or rent or bills. God, I'm jealous already. Doesn't have to call out to anybody, just does what the hell they want. That is not engaging Generation Z. That's not engaging anybody. Everybody's got bills and rent and taxes and a boss and hopefully a job. My God, we've got a hero who doesn't talk to anybody. That's stupid.
And ironically, this line was one of the best lines that Ncuti delivered.
Yes.
It's the irony behind that is RTD doesn't like people changing his lines or improvising. He wouldn't like working with me.
I just realized the common element for a lot of the dialogue that I had problems with in this episode. This one, which is trying to squeeze the description of the Doctor into a single phrase that encompasses his entire character. What we've just been talking about the last few minutes of trying to boil down incredibly complex political and socio-political issues into a single line. And then all of the expo dump in the first 10 minutes where you try to, is that every single time that RTD tried to shorthand something in this episode, whether it's the Doctor's description or the premise of the show or these complex issues, every time he tried to shorthand it, it just, flopped.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be curious as to whether that's something that continues. Maybe he thinks he needs to do that because he only has 8 episodes to play with. I don't know. But I'll be interested to see if that same kind of, stumbling when he's trying to shorthand everything continues to happen.
Where do you stand, Michelle, on this, right, Michelle? If we're having a debate about the skateboarding TARDIS, people say, oh, give us a break. It's just a bit of slapstick. And then you add the fact that it's not materializing. Then you say the sonic's very different. Then you have that dialogue here. Then you have, and you just add. And in the end, when are people allowed to kind of have a point that maybe the show is fundamentally changing? And, yes, if I was moaning about a skateboarding TARDIS, get over it, Brendan. It was maybe just for Wild Blue Yonder. But I am sensing now, Michelle, that actually if you add all this together, the other risk that Russell T Davies is taking is that he is massively changing the structure and the shape of the show quite quickly.
Oh, it is 100% a different show. I mean, as I even when you go back to another podcast or a year ago, Rabbi from Another Planet even said that it was going to be a different show. He wasn't sure if it was going to be something that he liked, but he thought it was initially was going to do well. Oh, I 100% believe it is a different show. And again, everyone's free to they like it or not like it. But I think the show has been a different show since Jodie's era too, to be certain. So this is a symptom. And I'm also wondering how damaged behind the scenes was the show that RTD and his ego thought that he could save it. How damaged behind it Is he trying to?
Well, I was going to follow up.
Stick a bullet, a band-aid on a bullet wound.
I was going to follow up. I was sorry, Michelle. I was going to follow up with you on that one, which is, yes, you're agreeing with me that I sense that it's not just a tiny thing that I should stop moaning about. It's a massive change. The other thing, though, is, Michelle, is do you actually, I know you've been okay with this episode, but do you think all these changes are needed?
I'm not sure, to be honest. And I think, and I'm optimistic now. We'll see how we are at the end of the season. You know, and everyone has a right to if this isn't their thing, they have this right to say that they are unhappy with it. If they like it, they have, that's fine. I don't think I'm not going to tell anybody to stop moaning or if they don't want to. I'm not sure, and we're going to have to see. The jury's still out ever the changes were needed.
I mean, Rachel, where do you stand on this one? Are you sensing that this show, as Melanie Weston Investigates is saying, he's basically telling us that the show's completely changed, and if you don't like it, get out. But a lot of us who've actually invested in this financially and in time are going, hold on a minute, you are massively changing the show, and you have no right to do that. Where do you stand on it? Do you think it is fundamentally changing, or do you think we're being too triggered or reading too much into it?
It is. I think it is changing, for sure. That is for sure. There's definitely a lot changing. I think they made that very, very clear at the end of the giggle that it was going to be almost completely different. Almost, I wouldn't say unrecognizable, but definitely not Doctor Who as we knew it. We're definitely going to be given something completely new now. They kind of avoided it in the Church on Ruby Road, but I think now that we're into the series, that they're definitely gonna double down on it. I think so. I mean, that line that the Doctor says that you got on the screen there, I don't think he would have ever really said that before. He might have said, "I have freedom." He might have said that, but would he have really said all of the other things? I don't think so.
Because it doesn't.
I mean, I harken back to that amazing Capaldi quote where he says, "I'm just a, visitor coming in, helping if I can." Then that's your mission statement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we've mentioned some of these, but I oh my God, that the pro-life issue there, which again we said soundbite. This nonsense about the refugees thing. I mean, yes, it wasn't a one-sentence soundbite, but it was such a. Do Europe, America, Britain, and in many places are having real issues. This is a global issue. But if you look at the complexity, there's the noun refugee and there's the noun economic migrant, and it's just a complicated argument. And no politician has got the answer to it, but RTD has thrown it into a 45-minute script. And this nonsense about you've got to go on the shoreline, and then, they're only little babies, so you think, oh, that's disgusting. That's just so unfair. But the argument is some of them are not refugees. And, why has he done this? This is just silly. I just don't know why we had to go there, because number one, I could argue the toss about this for quite a lot. You can be sympathetic to refugees if they are refugees, but then there's economic migrants. It's too complicated.
It's quite a contentious thing, hasn't it? It's been big news recently for us in the last sort of couple of years. So I think just tackling it, but making it even more obvious, and you actually have to. And you said he tackled it in years and years.
Yeah, and
he actually did it very well in years and years.
Yeah.
Does it need doing again? Not by RTD, I don't think, but even Millie Gibson said that they were going to be covering topics that were problematic, I guess.
Well, the other thing is that these are this dialogue here and the one you had up before are completely irrelevant to any of the subsequent events in the episode or to the development of the plot or the action or the resolution, to where you could completely excise this quote, the quote about the pro-abortion stuff. You could completely cut it and it wouldn't affect this episode one iota, which means that it's completely pointless being there only to serve the writer's purpose that has nothing to do with the actual development of the story, which means it's RTD's own personal thing he wanted to wedge in there, but it's completely irrelevant.
I think we're going to see a lot more of that, actually. The Starbeast pretty much showed that to us. And it became a moment of, we're going to tell you this, you're going to listen. And it bears absolutely no relevance to the plot at all. It didn't affect the plot in any way. Had it affected the plot in some way? Okay, maybe. But like the refugee stuff, I was just like, what?
Which, if you only have 8 episodes, which you only have a limited amount of time in the season, is creatively irresponsible.
And
if you're not making maximum use of all the time you have for every episode in a short schedule, it's creatively irresponsible to indulge yourself. Not surprising, but creatively irresponsible to indulge yourself.
And it's how you do it, isn't it?
Yes. Because I don't expect to watch any media and be 100% agree with the politics of the creatives. I don't really care. But I expect, if you're going to do it, let's do it in a creative way. And that is my one issue with the episode, was that wasn't needed in there. That you could have had a light, fluffy episode without the, like, oh, I know where you're going.
Yeah. And I think the reason Years and Years worked, I think, Rachel, was because you were actually with some of those characters when they crossed the channel.
Yeah.
The perception was different because you felt for those characters, etc., etc. Whereas this, I mean,
why wouldn't the home planet accept them? Why wouldn't the home planet accept the babies? That, that was made no,
Exactly. They didn't
they
couldn't even bother.
Because they could have had like a war hit or something, or they were hit by an asteroid and they couldn't take it, so they're destroyed or lost planet. So the babies and Nanny need to go somewhere else.
I mean, no, Michelle, you're exactly right. It seemed to me that it was. I mean, looking at it now, after all of you have commented, it seems to me clear that he was interested in wedging it in. And tying it into present day through that dialogue about, well, I guess things are different in your time, and she goes specifically not so different. So specifically correlating it to present time without doing what you think, as Brendan just said, he would do, which is tie it into, why are these babies in this situation because of what happened on this planet in this story. It's like, oh, I'm not going to bother with that. I'm too busy tying it into making a comment on, current 21st century politics. It's like, awesome.
I suppose the only other thing, because as you know, I think he has simplified his writing. Like the by generation was to get that by bit of dialogue in. It really felt like it. In this one, he wanted the babies to make his little preachy points that Cinnamon doesn't think they're that preachy. But he also had the babies in because he needed that line with Millie Gibson to say, you're connected somewhere with babies, Church and Ruby Road baby, and these are babies. So, God, he's so clever. This doctor is so clever after 61 years on TV. He goes, that's a baby and you're a baby, babies. I mean, it's not even Sherlock anymore, is it? It's whoa. You have to really be observant to be the doctor nowadays, because baby and baby is the same. I didn't connect that before. So, wow, this is really clever stuff.
You know what I just realized they could have done? He could have done it easily in one line to actually tie it in and maybe have like a nod to previous Who. When he sees the babies come out, before they start talking, have him turn to Ruby and go, I talk, baby, which we know he does because Matt Smith does. And then he says, I talk, baby. And then he starts talking to them in the baby language. And then all of a sudden they get surprised when they talk English. That would have been a great wow moment. It would have tied it back into what we already know of the show.
I wrote that down in my notes.
Oh, I talk, baby,
Great minds, Rachel, great minds. And again, it's a missed opportunity and it would have been fun.
Cinnamon, I do agree with you, is less preachy than what we've seen in the Chibnall era, which is also probably why I'm giving him more of a pass. Doesn't mean it wasn't clunkily done, 100%. But I'm so shell shocked from the Chibnall era that anything that's slightly decent, I'll give it more. I'm more favorable to.
I mean, that's why I was trying to be a little bit tight tonight with some of the review, because I thought, when I talk to John a lot, which I do, you know, John often says, well, because the Chibnall era was so bad, if this is an improvement, I'll judge it all right. And I said, well, we're trying to, you know, just treat every episode as separate. Doesn't matter what came before or after. And I still think that, I mean, I have to say, I think this is right in the bowels of the Chibnall disaster area on quality. Because the production values during Chris Chibnall were fine. I thought the production values were fine. I felt sorry.
How damaged is the series? How damaged is the franchise that he picked up?
And of course we don't know, we can't tell anymore. It's clever, isn't it, Michelle? Because now, because of the ratings and the streaming, you can't quite see if this is a success or not. And they'll never maybe tell us. They don't have to tell us.
I don't think a lot of things I think on ratings, we've been lied to for a lot of times. And I think it was also interesting when I was very early on the show, somebody made a comment that they try to do a Freedom of Information, your version of a Freedom of Information Act for the classic era ratings, and those won't be released. So it always made me wonder, were they as low as they said they were back in the 80s?
We're never going to know the real.
Well, they used the ratings in the 80s.
We'll never know the real.
And we know that was an excuse to get the show off. Maybe the ratings were higher than it was. I mean, I understand why everyone's talking about the ratings. To me, the ratings are a nothing burger, because as long as Disney is satisfied, we are going to get more Who.
Yeah, because this is what I'm trying to understand with Disney and any of the big streaming platforms. They don't necessarily want quality content, do they? They just want to fill their schedules, because it's just constant streaming.
And when they have a lost one that goes down, they get better tax credits. So when you underperform, so I think the ratings issue is a nothing burger. We probably are going to get a third season, and it's going to be interesting. Is we are going to get Doctor Who. It may not be what we all like. Yeah. But we are going to get it for at least the conceivable future.
It will be interesting to see if, as the season goes on, we ever actually hit the point where we're actually saying, "Come back, Chibs, all is forgiven."
Well, I never thought
we'd get a very dark day for me to say that.
I never thought we'd get there. Just so everybody knows, we when we judged tonight's story, The Space Babies, we have been very, very strict. And actually, I've looked at the figures, and while we were giving good for certain things and special measures for certain things, overall, this has to be needs improvement. This story, as a collective from the group, is needs improvement. And that's how we're officially going to put it. What will we think tomorrow night about, did the maestro hit a bum note? Oh, I'm dying to see what my panelists are thinking.
Rachel, what are we in for?
I don't know.
Get a paper bag and just breathe into it every once in a while.
Oh no.
Okay.
Or
and a big bottle of bourbon.
You know what? And I can't say anything because I'm not on the episode. It was different. I liked it. Don't mean I want to see it more again. It is definitely going to be one of those seminal episodes where you're either pro or you hate or you love it. There's not going to be no middle ground on this baby.
Right.
What is that term, Brendan? Is that
it's not as bad as I thought it was going to be. It was not as bad as I thought it was going to be.
But Michelle, and I know I'm trying not to exclude you two, so I'm going very general, but my concern was, if you add the two episodes together, it was 1 hour, 40 minutes before the Eurovision. And that was quite an indulgence. I mean, that's an old Doctor Who complete set. And those two episodes were so interesting and experimental that I actually do really wonder whether that was a good idea to put them back to back before the Eurovision, because I think a lot of people I know, one they might have accepted, but the two together doing lots of interesting things.
Maybe there should be a week separation between them, maybe a week.
I think that was the initial. Brendan,
and I think that was the initial plan because BBC wanted, from what I've heard, BBC wanted it to be on May the 4th, which is the Star Wars Day.
Right.
So they were forced to put them back to back.
And the other thing was, though, Gary, I don't know what the answer is, but to be honest, once you've seen it, and if you imagine being in Britain watching the Eurovision Song Contest afterwards, I'm not saying anything about the episode, don't worry, but the fact that it was focused on music, blah, 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 in a way, kind of almost leads into the Eurovision.
Yeah.
But I don't
do
know
like
if
I do like MCTV's suggestion in the chat that maybe to watch this episode tonight is to do it as a drinking game and just take a shot every time somebody says "space babies." Maybe that's the way actually to do this episode.
You'd have a good night. Oh gosh. Well, look, that's been good. And can I just say, please join us tomorrow night at 7 p.m. and please give us a subscriber. We've had a few people adding to us their subscriptions. I appreciate it because we're a brand blooming new channel. We're busting the gut. My production values are better than that. No, they're not. But I'm trying my best with little features and all the rest of it. And so please like and subscribe. Give us support. Come on. I'm happy to have panelists. I'm happy to have people come on, question us and all the rest of it. So please, thank you for that. Now, because the software has changed slightly, you might have a laugh at the end here because while we say goodbye, it might actually just cause merry hell. But anyway, thanks to the panel. Good night.
Subscribe.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye, Duggan.
Well,
Night.
Oh, on as well. There you go. It's like Easter, isn't it? Like and subscribe.
This is way better than your. Thanks to the great